Standards and Appeals Public Review Session. Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 11th, 2021, 10 a.m. session. There is no public testimony during the review session. The first item up is Appeals Calendar, Continued Hearing Items, item number 21, 2019-265 BC, 60371A, 35 Giffords Lane, Staten Island.
Sorry, just a second. Okay. Well, I have to say, it finally looks like we're getting somewhere with this application. I stand corrected about the use of the term valet parking in this context. I should have said attended parking. The church has represented that 3 parking lot attendants will guide vehicles arriving to the lot where to go. So I called that valet, but they call it attended. Okay, it's attended. This will also enable denser parking arrangements during services. There will also be a shuttle bus. So to correct my statement, we need a restrictive declaration committing to a shuttle bus and to attended parking. And I didn't see a draft restrictive declaration in the submission. I know that we've asked for a shuttle bus schedule several times, and I didn't find that in the submission, but did find in the EAS something that says at page 24 of the PDF, weekend church shuttle van schedule Sunday, continuous 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., staffed by a dedicated driver with capacity for 14 passengers per trip, would make loops every 10 minutes to public parking location at PNR Great Kills parking lot and at the Great Kills Staten Island Railroad Station. Weekday church shuttle van service, adequate parking available on site, shuttle to be added if parking is not available. Parking attendants located at entry vestibule in communication with shuttle driver directing congregants to nearby facilities. That description that's in the EAS at page 24 of the PDF should be included in the restrictive declaration and in our conditions in our resolution. So sorry, just one second. The statement of fact states that the shuttle bus will pick up congregants from quote, the circle connecting Sampson and Schley, unquote. I don't know where that is. That doesn't sound anything like what the EAS says. I thought there is a parking lot somewhere that congregants are going to be directed to, such as what's said in the EAS. And the per church parking lot includes a parking space for a shuttle bus. So I don't know what they're talking about, the circle of Sampson and Schley. It might be a misunderstanding by the counsel for the applicant. The pastor asked that the gate to Sampson be left open during operation hours for, quote, emergencies. I ask again, which is what I've been saying or asking at several hearings, what do other houses of worship do for egress when they have only one frontage and only one parking lot? And so I don't want to belabor this point. We've spent far too much time on it, but the commissioners have expressed their opposition to facilitating overflow parking on the residential side streets. This would be the natural outcome of the open gate during services, which is what's being requested. As stated at the prior hearing, the board's non-acceptance of encouraging traffic through the side streets via a second entrance was permitted in the 2005 Court of Appeals decision in Pine Knolls versus the town of Monroe. So this board has the authority granted effectively by the Court of Appeals to deny that second access point. The EAS mistakenly states at page 53 of the EAS that the access gate is for fire department vehicular access. It is not. They must change that to pedestrian access. The fire department was clear that it does not park its apparatus on site. I do have to say that why was I having to scour around like this? I was looking for answers to other questions and discover these inconsistencies. And given the conversation, I'm quite uncomfortable with having found these inconsistencies throughout the documents. There's a proper zoning analysis that provides the requested information, and including that about lot coverage by parking. The rule, though, is that in an R2, not more than 50% of the lot area not covered by buildings containing residences may be covered in parking, driveways, and bike parking. Of course, this is a community facility, but the provision provides guidance aimed at protecting the residential character of the community. The calculations then are incorrect if we were to apply this to the 25-64 rule in the zoning resolution. In this case, the building covers 8,600 square feet of a 27,000 square foot lot. So 19,000 square feet is left in open space, and 50% of that is actually is 9,600 square feet. And according to the calculations, the parking lot is 11,750 square feet. So that's much more than would be permitted under that section 2564. However, I don't know how those measurements were taken. When they measure the parking lot, it should exclude the walkways and landscaping along the walkways, but not the required landscaping in the parking lot itself. So, because I've always been concerned that there's a lot of asphalt on this site. The site plan C1-0 is missing some dimensions of the planting areas along the Giffords Lane frontage and side lot lines. The planting beds and pathways along the Sampson and residential side lot lines must also be dimensioned. The landscaping drawing must show planting bed details with curbing to retain the soil, and there must be wheel stops provided to prevent car overhangs from killing the plants. They need to show the sizes of the access gates. They need to show the sizes of the access gates from Sampson. Has a lot of feedback. Everybody, please mute. Okay. Thank you. I think that was Tony's feedback, actually. So the landscaping, they need to show the sizes of the access gates from Sampson. These are to be pedestrian only gates, so not wider than 3 feet. There is one that is suspiciously wide in the 8-foot range that needs to be changed to 3 feet. They need to dimension the curb cut. The zoning calculation sheet indicates that very few required street trees can be provided due to power lines and poles. They should indicate on the drawings where these obstructions are that prevent such trees from being planted on the Giffords and Sampson frontages, and show the street tree locations that can be planted. So just because you need to show what the regulations are on the drawings, say no tree between this distance away from a curb cut, no tree this distance away from a pole, a power pole, something to that effect, a light pole. I was going to ask why the landscaping along the residential property line stops so abruptly, but when I go to a satellite view, I see that this applicant is relying on the vegetation being provided by the neighbor on that side. That same image presented the response to the landscape architect's comment at the last hearing that an ivy would not survive on the wall of the subject building, and that the landscape architect has a lot of experience with ivy and this would never work. But meanwhile, you look at that image, and ivy is flourishing on that wall. So it's actually doing really great on that back wall over there. So that's quite a strange statement. Then the landscape drawing needs to show a minimum start height of 4 feet for the trees to be planted along the residential property line. Facades are now being addressed to be more respectful of the community, finally. The trash storage room has been moved inside the building in the kitchen area as directed, and includes refrigerated storage for perishables. And there's a revised lumen spread diagram And it seems that no lighting sources are located adjacent to residences. So I don't know that that there's concern about that. And those were my comments. Vice Chair Shanda.
I'm satisfied with the submission that's been submitted, apart from the inconsistencies that you identified. With regards to the lot coverage, could you repeat what you said? I just wanted to understand what you had mentioned.
Yeah, so the way that it works is, what I've been concerned about is this is a really large parking lot, and I was concerned that the parking lot was just too much asphalt. So I'm aware, so I know that in these low density districts, there is a regulation that says that the open space that's not covered by buildings containing residences cannot be occupied. It's not only in low density, it's also even in R10s, cannot be covered by more than 50% of that open space cannot be covered by more than 50% in parking and driveways and things related to the parking. So I had asked for that calculation to be done several times, and they did do a calculation, but they misinterpreted how it's read. They only looked at what's the required open space for a community facility, and then they divided that in half, and that's where they got that 11,000 square feet of coverage by driveways, and parking would be allowed, but that's not the language in the text. It's 24. Sorry, I lost it. Section 2564, which says, I'll read it. It says, restrictions on the use of open space for parking and driveways are set forth in this section in accordance with the provisions of section 2312. In R1, 2, 3, and 4, blah, 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 driveways, private roads, open accessory off-street parking spaces, unenclosed accessory bicycle parking spaces, or open accessory off-street loading berths may occupy no more than 50% of the lot area not covered by buildings containing residences. It's a residential rule, and it's not available for community facilities. It's more of a guide to be able to tell, is this too much lot coverage with parking?
And so this would also apply for the portion of the site that's in the bed of Lamoka Avenue?
Well, Lamoka, we're eliminating effectively the impact of the bed, right? We're basically saying, I see what you're saying. You're saying, well, that's the thing that's confusing. We're saying it's still a roadway?
Technically, isn't it? In the sense like are there, I actually have to go back to my old notes. Can it be built upon? If we're eliminating it as a roadway completely, can it be built upon, or do they have to retain it for easement or other access points and other things?
It can be built upon to comply with zoning, whatever that lot coverage requirement is for zoning. So I wasn't looking at the lot coverage of the church. The lot coverage of the church is less than what it's allowed to be, right? I was looking at the lot coverage of the parking.
Okay.
Because since it's a residential area, you want to see more landscape or as much as possible, right?
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's just that the site is so turned the other way around. It's Sampson is the residential and Gifford is the commercial street frontage. And with all the design guidelines and elimination of any access way from Sampson Avenue, I see your point, and I would rationalize it this way, that in this case, because the site is turned the other way around, in the sense where the residential front has been enhanced through all the guidelines that you have laid out in terms of not allowing any vehicular access from Sampson onto this site, providing more greenery onto and landscaping along Sampson. It definitely is in keeping with the residential character that is there on Sampson Avenue, whereas Gifford is totally a commercial street frontage and it abuts a railroad station and a railroad track. So I think the fact that they have extended the frontage and covered the parking area around it from its neighboring commercial, in appearance, it is much better than what it is today right now, which is like a vast open kind of a leaping gap, whereas now it would be more covered with greenery. While I haven't looked through the regulations thoroughly, but while that may not meet exactly the tenet of the regulations, but in terms of the appearance and the urban design, I think it goes much further. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out.
Right. So I don't disagree, since now we closed Sampson. This came up when there was just so much, everything was a gigantic parking lot.
Right.
And so this was one of the ways to say, here's another reason it can't be such a gigantic parking lot.
No. I don't disagree.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of, if it helps in preparing our discussions, I'm just kind of laying that out there.
Okay, fair.
But yeah, I think all the documents should be consistent for future boards references and for our resolution also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also because our council tries to write a resolution. And
Exactly.
what the answer is.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Otley Brown. Oops.
Have any additional comments?
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Sheta. That was something that Commissioner Sheta, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I have no additional comments. I just want to mention that the letter that was submitted in support of the second access point from Sampson by the church pastor, I couldn't find it what is mentioned in that letter. I couldn't find it reasonable. Actually, the reasons listed in that letter are more or less engineering related than they could be considered as faith related. So I still believe that a second access point on Sampson shouldn't be provided. Thank you.
Thank you. So the way that it's shown right now, they need to correct the drawings because it's showing what obviously could be a small vehicle passing through gate. So it needs to be a pedestrian gate. And we talk about it having that special type of fire department lock.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Shabeta.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing further from me.
Okay. All right.
Item number 22, 2018 188A and 189A, not 19428, 19432 Dunton Avenue, Queens.
So this application originally had GCL 36 applications, which have been withdrawn. So question is, I see someone's hand up. I'm just going to remind, this is a review session. We're not in the public hearing yet. So first, commissioners are going to be speaking about the projects, and then we will move to the public hearing, at which point the public will be invited to speak, and also team members, okay? So to go back, so if they filed an application to withdraw the GCL 36 without prejudice, we need to vote on those, correct?
Right.
So let's just start off with that. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the withdrawal of the two application. Are they the same number? No.
No, it's 2018, is it 148,
184.
184A, 185A, 186A, and 187A.
7A, correct. Okay, right. So to make a motion to withdraw those applications.
Chair Perlmutter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay. So now there's opposing counsel representing the Holliswood Civic Association that who submitted a letter on April 22nd. which I'll discuss a little bit further below. Opposing counsel's statement, though, about the actual ownership of the property is not borne out by deeds or foreclosure documents recorded on Egress. And without more, this is, kind of property law 101. This is New York State is a race notice statute. So unless you've recorded the document on it, you don't own the property yet. So whoever recorded first wins, right? So far, the statements about who owns the property are not supported by the opposing counsel statements about the ownership are not supported by documents. The applicant provided us with a topo map that makes clear the extent of the map streets here. And my notes from the last hearing are that, so there was a comment at the last hearing by one of the neighbors who talked about wanting that Clover Place should be retained to go through to Dunton Avenue from Foothill Avenue. And my notes show that Tony had.
I didn't hear anything from them.
Didn't hear anything back, right? So DOT was supposed to be looking at this again was the issue. We only have a little bit of a dated sign off from them. So I don't know if they're weighing in on this question anymore.
I could reach out. I mean, I didn't reach out recently, but the last few weeks I asked them a question. I asked them if they were going to submit a revision of comments or anything. I didn't get anything back.
Okay. So could you pose the question directly? Like, is there interest in maintaining that connection? So at least the record is clear that the specific question was asked, right? Because obviously they're proposing to build a house in the middle of that.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay. There's a February 19th, 2021 fire department letter of objection to this application, stating that the hospital from which these two tax lots have been subdivided has no functioning sprinkler system, and fire department requests that we not decide on the applications until this has been addressed. So applicant should discuss the relationship of the hospital ownership to the current owners here. However, it seems evident from the submissions that they are the same, that the owner of the hospital and the owner of these development sites are the same entity. Until February 3rd, 2020, this was actually on one very large tax lot 52. And then it was subdivided, so February 3rd, 2020. And the 2015 deed information on lot 52 indicates that 3861 Realty received the entire parcel. And 3861 Realty is the owner of record for this case. And though the tax lots have been subdivided, the zoning lot has not, as far as can be determined, by the lack of recording of zoning lot description and ownership statement on Egress. In other words, the zoning lot has not been subdivided, because you could only do that if you recorded a zoning lot description or a restricted declaration. So it looks like they're responsible for addressing the fire department's concerns. So the same applicant is responsible to the fire department. Let's see if there's anything else on that. And we do have DEP sign off for the sewer connection.
Right.
And okay. And so understanding better the relationship between the owner of record of this application and the owner of the entire development, i.e. they are the same. I'm more appreciative and sort of comprehending the community's vociferous opposition to the application before us, our application being limited in its scope as it is. BSA has often taken the position on many cases that where it can be of service in bringing a proper an owner into compliance with laws and regulations, it tries to do that while a case is before us. Hence, we always require pay downs of ECB violations prior to issuing a decision. cleanup of the site and proper protection for neighbors. Fire department has pointed out a serious safety hazard at the empty building on the zoning lot. And there are about $60,000 in open ECB violations on lot 52, which is the lot of record on BIS for violations that predate the tax lot apportionment. So I know that, the question before us is, can they build on the bed of a map street? But on the other hand, even fire department is saying this is an opportunity for to be able to get some response from the property owners who are the property owners of the subject site. So anyway, those are my comments. Vice Chair Shanda.
I have no comments on this. I'm satisfied with the application. Thank you.
Oops. We may have testimony on this from the neighbors.
Yeah, I don't think that fire department's maybe joining us today.
Right, that I understand, but their letter was
Just
very,
FYI.
yeah, their letter was very specific. So, Commissioner Ali Brown,
I have no comments.
Commissioner Sheta, sorry. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. That's okay. No, nothing further from me.
Okay, Commissioner Shibeta.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing further from me.
Okay. All right.
Okay, zoning calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 23, 2017-145 BZ, 241 East 59th Street, Manhattan. This is this PCE.
I believe all the requested issues were addressed. In particular, the notes about the fire alarm system were removed from the plans at fire department request. I don't know actually how to figure out whether the application for the fire alarm system was withdrawn. That was one of the requests by fire department. There's also a note on the signage drawing A6 that could be improved. Instead of saying DOT to approve signage, which sounds like a direction from us, it should say, quote, signage is subject to DOB review for compliance with zoning and building code. So they should change that note. Those are my only comments. Vice Chair Shanda.
I have no additional comments. I am satisfied that a note has been added on the signage that it's for DOB to determine the signage would be in compliance with the underlying zoning, especially with regards to the marquee signage.
Right. Well, it doesn't say specifically marquee, it just says signage, right?
Right, but because it's the marquee, how you measure it is, it's complete, I would leave it to DOB, that's why.
So no, in other words, we don't want to decide for ourselves, but we almost, yeah, okay. But we did. Okay. Commissioner Ali Brown.
No additional comments.
Okay. Commissioner Sheta.
Nothing further from me.
Okay. And Commissioner Shibeta.
Nothing further from me, Chair.
Okay.
Okay, item number 24, 2019-24 BZ, 2721 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, on this one, I don't know if commissioners are aware that there was a submission pretty late last night, which I was only able to read really quickly this morning. So, and then had to amend a lot of my comments. So anyway, and in particular, Commissioner Sheta, there's a set of structural calculations for the wall. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that. There really are calculations. So, getting stuff the night before at the last minute, it's not very helpful. So anyway, so we received on Friday afternoon and again yesterday morning, and I don't know if we received additional ones. I didn't see, somewhere around 30 letters from neighbors in opposition to this application. They cited, as we have heard previously during these hearings, the disregard this business has for its neighbors and the imposition of the business on the neighborhood with double and triple parking on Nostrand that makes passage through it nearly impossible. These recent letters add information about employee parking on residential streets and noise and disruption associated with this. These letters express the same fears as I have, that the rooftop parking will be converted to sales parking. I don't know, our only recourse against that is a restrictive declaration that's enforceable by New York City. But I don't know if it will be enough to prevent this. And all I can hope is that a vigilant community will report infractions to the board. And the conditions of the resolution will instruct future boards that failure to comply with those terms will result in revocation of the special permit and the required closure of the rooftop parking. So a submission made last night states that with respect to the neighbors' complaints, they're going to provide a phone number. So I'm kind of like, the community is complaining about all of these things. You've heard what the complaints are, and the response is, we'll give you a phone number. So I'd like to know what in the world a phone number is going to do, because the question is, what will the company do to address the issues already complained of? That's what has been asked throughout this hearing. So BSA staff has participated in 2 calls, actually, that I'm aware of with a local council member concerning the damage to property issue and the complaints that these neighbors' complaints. And I hope that that council member is listening to this hearing and to the community concerns and remains active in the issue, as opposed to relying on a phone number. A phone number is only a phone number. That's all. So the recent submission states that they can install an audible alert for pedestrians. That's something I was concerned about. A lot of cars coming and going along that sidewalk. This should be noted on the plans. And then, of course, it's subject to DOT approval. I don't know why they would object to an audible alert. The submission also, this recent submission also states that there is no need to provide attenuation to the neighbors at the corners of the property that have a direct line of sight to the rooftop, because the barrier they are installing is a, quote, courtesy. I'm very surprised by that statement. That barrier is no courtesy. That barrier is being installed at the direct instruction of this board. Sound level readings for door slams and other kinds of impact noises were recorded at over 70 and 80 decibels. Not so that unlike the statement in that letter, very confusing, they're not recorded at just 2 decibels above ambient. And then there's a statement in that letter that says the calculated reading at the roof edge based on the 58 decibel output is reduced somehow, but I don't understand what that output is. It shouldn't be based on the 75 to 80 decibel output. And the idea that, they said that they can't produce a red line copy of the noise study so that we can see what the changes are. I find that a ridiculous statement, unless the entire document is a new document and every single word is different. I just don't understand that. We received also, as I said, Commissioner Sheta, we received structural information on the wall. I wanted to know how many spaces will be reserved for customers and how many for staff at the site. The way it sounds as presented, there will be no room for customers at all if the employees park there. And why would you need valet parking for employees? I didn't understand that at all. It seems to be a shift in the narrative. The original narrative was that customers would come and a valet would take their car and drive it to the roof or down into the cellar. Now it sounds like the valet will be working for the employees. I find that quite strange. These are people who drive cars for a living. What do they need a valet for? So I'm confused about that. And I don't accept the statement that the data changed or there was a mistake in the data. A consultant submitted data to us that includes 154 appointments per day on Saturday and 36 to 55 per day on the other days. And that data was submitted in a chart. And then after all of that, the same consultant is distancing itself from its own collected data to come up with a new data that's a fraction of the prior number. Meanwhile, they tell us that the intention is to use this garage to park all of the employees and customers from all of the 5 dealerships and service stations. So I have to say that I don't know about DOT, but I no longer believe any of the data that's being given to us, because it's all just kind of seems like it's made up as you go. In the end, it doesn't really matter, because the question is 48 spaces on the roof. But the question is it 48 spaces for customers? Is it 48 spaces for employees? Or, which is it? Which should it be? And that's something I do need DOT to weigh in on. And unfortunately, I think DOT is relying on faulty data. They did provide an updated survey of the roof heights to indicate that the building is indeed 23 feet, not more than 23 feet above average curb at the rear. There's a sign panel on the roof. You cannot have a sign extending more than, I don't think you're allowed to have a sign on a roof at all in this district. So they didn't respond to that question. And they don't show this architectural detail on the drawings, which needs to be shown. So there's this object that extends higher than the roof that needs to be shown on the drawings. That will obstruct the fire department's access and also one of the parking spaces or something. So they need to correct the drawings with that. And probably there's no sign allowed at that height above the roof. They need to amend the drawings to respond to the DOT comments, amend our drawings to respond to DOT comments. And then our council sent comments to their council about their draft restrictive declaration, which we haven't gotten another copy of. There's a lot of issues that need to be corrected on that. And then there's a proposal now, which it sounds like DOT is accepting for this truck unloading zone, which will handle the carriers, right? So the first part of it is we need to get a specific answer to the question about when the up to 5 carriers will be making their deliveries and pickups. The statement is that it will be during off-peak hours. That's kind of confusing because there are 5 carriers coming per day. So when is that off-peak? And they said that one of them arrives at 10 in the morning. Is that off-peak? So, and obviously the complaints about circulation, traffic congestion, have to do with the carriers parking there in part. So that seems like it's occurring at times when it isn't off peak, or people wouldn't be complaining that they can't drive down the street. And then I'm trying to sort of skip over stuff that was so DEP had comments also, and about the noise analysis that needs to be responded to. And
yes, they did respond to the noise comments, and we sent those to DEP in
Okay.
early April.
okay, thank you. All right. And then finally, what? Oh, and then the other question is, what about there's this truck loading zone. And my impression is that they're going to also be using the sidewalks for parking of the cars that don't have license plates, which is illegal. So I'd like to know how they're going to be handling that, and also how they're going to be handling the double and triple parking that has become a plague in the neighborhood. Okay, I'm sorry, some of this is confused because I'm trying to mix my prior comments with a fast reading of the submission this morning. And so it's been hard to do that. Okay, Vice Chair Shanda.
Thank you. I'm satisfied with most of the revisions and clarification that has been provided thus far. One of the things that I did ask for was a detail of the roof section where the landscaping will be, to make sure that it is what would be required to build a landscape area on the roof, and it would be complied with throughout the construction, because oftentimes we hear that you show it in the plan, but then it gets built and then it turns out it's not buildable. So we wanted to make sure whatever is being proposed on the roof can be built, and the roof can accept it, and it has all the necessary structural requirements and guidelines that a construction company will be following to build it. I did have one question, which I don't think.
Did they provide it? I don't know.
Yes,
exactly.
yes. It's the section drawing.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of my question was, how were they going to provide the various the elements we're going to join? I mean, not that I'm an expert on it, but at least a detailed drawing has been provided, which shows how it's going to be built and each elements that would be needed to support a rooftop landscape area. That's really where I was getting at. I did have one question, and I don't think that got responded to even in the latest submission, and that had to do with the reservoir spaces. So as I understand it, the customers will come and will drive down the ramp and will park. There are 4 designated, like a parking area in the cellar, from where the valets will pick up the vehicles and will park in the facility. And the employees parking will be, and then the elevator will be used to bring the customer vehicles or any of the sales vehicles, any of those up to the ground floor. And same way, the elevator parking will be used, elevators will be used to take the vehicles up to the roof. My question was, in the drawings, as I see it, I just want to scroll to those drawings. Neither the cellar nor the ground floor show the total number of reservoir spaces. 10 reservoir spaces are proposed, are indicated in the plan. As I understand it, there are 4 that would be on the that are shown on the first floor plan, but the remaining 6 are along the ramp, and those need to be shown in the plan so that we know exactly where all those 10 reservoir parking spaces would be within the facility and where they're leading to. So if the applicant could clarify that, those 2 sets of drawings, that would be very helpful. I have no additional comments. I'll wait to hear from DOT and DEP for the remainder of the analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Riley-Brown.
Well, the way I look at this case is that the project is as of right, except for the rooftop parking, which means if we deny this or if we accept this, there's still going to be a ground floor showroom and a cellar area that they can use in whichever way they want. I also take into account the fact that the traffic situation in front of this site is pretty atrocious. You know, there is double and triple parking. It's very difficult to drive down this block during operating hours. So I balance both of these issues. And in the balancing of the two issues, to me, the most reasonable thing is that they provide the rooftop parking with the idea that they're going to get some of these cars, if not all of them, off of the street so that that will no longer be a nuisance to the neighborhood. Then I look at the rooftop plans to ensure that it's not a nuisance to the people behind. And I find that this project has been proceeding in the right direction in terms of providing the appropriate screening and limiting the access to the roof so that there isn't as much of a disturbance to the neighbors. So at the end of my analysis, I feel that this project is more of a plus for the surrounding neighborhood than a negative, and so I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. It's true that I have to say that the design of the roof has improved enormously with the planting setback, setting everything back 30 feet from the rear property line. I hope that the community is listening so they can hear that that was what we did. We removed the parking from 30 feet back, and it's replaced with planting, with landscaping. So thank you. Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Sheta.
Thank you, Chair. I did look at the submission like midnight yesterday, and I continued doing that earlier today. Just to be clear, based on what I just hear, to avoid entangling this board in any like review for the building itself, I made this clear during the past 3 hearings. I said, I don't care about the building. It's not our issue that the building's gonna sustain the loads or not. I just care about the rooftop parking. And in order for us to believe that they gonna utilize this rooftop parking without impacting the neighbors, they need to provide this non-courtesy acoustical wall. It's not a courtesy. It's needed to avoid impacts on neighbors. And in order for us to grant this, one of the requirements is to provide this wall and to make sure that this wall is buildable and it's gonna be built right. So what I said, 3 hearings in a row, I don't care about the building. I care about just this fence. Give me calcs. And that's what I said. If you look at the video, and I actually did listen to it, not yesterday, midnight, but before, when I saw the submission coming without any mention to this structural issue, I went to the video, and from hour 2, 49 minutes and 52 seconds, to hour 2, 59, almost 10 minutes plus discussing this. And we ended up with the applicant saying, oh, any person with engineering judgment would realize that this fence is gonna be okay. Oh, we build skyscrapers in New York City. Okay, fine. I didn't say that any person wouldn't believe that this wall is buildable. What I said is I wanna make sure that you're gonna build this right. And give me submission related to that fence, just that fence. What came again, this submission is the retaining wall, just the retaining wall, not the fence. And you know what makes me like really skeptical about that kind of requirement in this application is, and I'm gonna show you that. If you look at, this is a section that they gave us with that retaining wall, all the focus here on that retaining wall, in reference to what the vice chair mentioned.
Wait, stop before you say that. There were some hand calculations.
Yes,
There
I saw them. I'm coming.
Okay.
This is page
Okay.
1 of these hand calculations. Yes,
Okay,
you're talking about this.
yes,
right?
right.
Yes, but Vice Chair spoke about the building and we want to make sure that it's going to take the loads, nothing, and details provided, nothing on this drawing give anything whatsoever to answer the question that whether the building is going to take the loads or not. I don't care about that. I want to say this. This is not my job to look at the building, whether it's going to take the loads or not. All the information here are typical. Existing steel beam. What kind of section? No mention. What is the spacing? No mention. What kind of steel is that? No mention. I don't need that. All what I care about is just this post here and the panels. And what I got this submission is the design of this tiny retaining wall. It's 4 feet wide. This is the rebar for it. And on here, calculations for the retaining wall. Again, just for the retaining wall. And what scares me is if you look at this section here, this is section AA. Section AA is here in the post for that fence. That's why I'm concerned about these little details. And I recall what I said last hearing is people built George Washington Bridge back in 1930 and it's still functioning and it's perfect. I know people who built a smaller, much smaller bridge somewhere in Florida and it did collapse. The smaller the project, that's my experience. The smaller the project, the less careful some engineers handle, and it might be, at the end of the day, it might be a problem in the design. So look at this, section AA here. The post is a box, it's a square. But if you look at the drawings, I'm not sure, can you see this? I changed the drawing, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at this is not, you see this? This is not a box. This is an I section.
Yeah.
You're giving me a fence detail. This is a detail for a fence that's the foundation for that fence is like a small pile or a pier. Why are you giving me this? And why are you giving me the calcs for the retaining wall? I didn't ask you for that. I just asked for calculations for the fence. And I believe I very clearly explained myself during the past hearing. And you know what? I'm gonna do you a favor. If you look at the reinforcement detail here, and Mr. Structure Engineer, listen carefully to this, and the applicant as well. This retaining wall, I just put a Word document on the screen. Do you see that?
No.
Okay. Hold on.
But to be clear, the calculations for the retaining for the fence are because we're concerned about wind forces, right?
The calculations are just for the retaining wall, nothing for the acoustical wall itself. It's
Right.
just for the concrete wall. But
Right.
even if you look at these calculations, this is a very typical retaining wall, L-shaped, like the one they use. You have weights acting on the leg of the wall, and you have force lateral that's coming from the wind. It wants to open this wall like that. So a cracking would occur here. And this is what we call it in the structural world, the bending acting on that wall. And in order to make this wall resist that building, that bending, you need to provide reinforcement at the top here, the red, and here. If you look at the section, look at the top and here at the sides. If you go back to the section they provided, nothing at the top. That's what I was talking about. Nothing put at the top, meaning that this design here, this wall is lacking actually rebar at the top of the wall. This is a clue. This tells you something that if you don't make sure that this fence is not engineered correctly, it's not buildable, this entire case is over. Because if you eliminate this acoustical wall, this application is falling apart. We cannot tolerate this without making sure that no noise impact is gonna migrate through that planter to the neighbors. And in order to make sure that this happens, We need to make sure that this wall stays. It's built correctly and stays. And one more thing, if this wall is not built correctly and wind hits and it falls, it's gonna be in the neighbor's backyard. That's why I was like, during the last hearing, please give me this 1, 2, 3. And again, all what I got here, this is page 1, wind calculations. This is the wind force. Where is the reference for that? How did you get to 17.5 pound per square foot? No clue. And then continuing the reactions. I checked these numbers and I don't believe these numbers are right. I did check the reaction A and the reaction B, and hopefully the structural engineer can walk me through how he got these numbers. Just numbers on the piece of paper. And then to continue with these calculations, it's just 3 checks. The overturning of that wall, making sure that this wall is not gonna overturn, and making sure that the reinforcement of that wall is gonna take the forces. And like I said, that the rebar at the top of this footing of this wall is absent, meaning that this wall could crack. So I'm not sure how many hearings we should be looking at this. Enough is enough. Please listen to our video and provide what we asked you to provide. Thank you.
And not at 8 o'clock at night on the night before the hearing, that we have to review at midnight or 6 a.m. or both.
Yeah, you have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shabeta.
Well, thank you, Chair. I don't want to be repetitive, but I do want to emphasize my concern with some of the community opposition and the response by the applicant and their team. They need to provide us with a much better response with regard to how they're planning on addressing the both noise and trash pollution that is created by their employees. Perhaps one alternative would be creating in their operational plan that employees cannot park in the street and they have to actually use a portion of the indoor parking that or the upstairs parking that they have. That way, those cars, because many of the complaints seem to be related around employees waiting in their cars, eating, and then throwing trash out. Perhaps requiring that no employees to take street parking and only park within the confines of the facility might alleviate some of those concerns raised by the neighbors. And
I actually don't know how many employees. I think we have that data, but there's been so many submissions and they all contradict each other. I don't know what the answer is anymore. But anyway, all right, thank you. Okay, and I do have to say, I don't disagree with the statement, Commissioner Holly Brown, in that the question before us is whether there should be rooftop parking. But the question is, how should there be rooftop parking? Kind of, in the face of all of these other questions that are coming up. Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. Tony, you're muted.
Sorry, just one quick thing. The second call, do you want to do that later?
I thought he's not available until afternoon. That's what
He said
his
he was-
email this morning said.
Yeah, but he said I emailed you again. He said he was available, but
Well, so you
you want to
mean,
do it this
well,
afternoon?
yeah, well, yeah, I guess this afternoon. This one may be going on for a long time, so let's just do it this afternoon. That one probably.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this concludes the public review session. We'll now commence with the public hearing.
Oh, I see. We got a email that he said he could do it now. Okay, let's do this afternoon.
Okay. So this is the Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing for May 11th, 2021, 10 a.m. session. The first item up is appeals calendar, continued hearings, item number 21, 2019-265 BZ 60371A, 35 Giffords Lane, Staten Island. This is a BZ and a zoning calendar and a appeals case.
Right.
I don't know why that lineup is long like that. Okay.
Oh, because you have to pick one.
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay. So if this is your application, please raise your Zoom hand to be admitted into so this is for the team, right? To be admitted.
Mhm. There we go.
Yeah.
Dick Rosenberg, okay.
Okay. Who are we waiting for?
Kevin Williams is registered, but I don't see him.
Oh.
I think we're waiting for Kevin Williams and Kim Hoyt.
Voice. You want to text Kevin, perhaps?
Sure.
Can you start without him?
Yes, I think we can.
Okay.
Okay, raise your right hands, everyone. You affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Rosenberg, please state your name and proceed, or I don't know who's doing it. Richard?
I'm going to pass to Richard.
Sure. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. We attended the executive session online and are aware of the board's comments. We're very happy that it appears that four of the commissioners have stated that they have nothing further or no further comments on the application. And we understand that the chair has said that she feels that we are getting somewhere. So we understand that this application has been a challenge, and we're happy that it appears to be approaching a time where we're coming to a conclusion. That doesn't mean that we don't have some disagreement with some of the things that have been stated on the record. We note that Pastor Comus submitted a statement which set forth the programmatic needs of the church. We stand behind those not merely as an engineering tool, but also with regards to the important faith-based mission of the church. Chair, I know you discussed the Pine Knolls case, and understanding that was an application involving the building of a second access roadway for an enlargement of over 16,000 square feet of facility. So I think we've got some disagreements in that regard. However, we do want to proceed with this matter. I would just say one thing, which is that given my personal history, not just with this case, but at BSA representing religious applicants, it's not my experience that the board would create a condition where somebody looking at this as an objective observer would say it doesn't seem to make sense from a safety standpoint. And the pastor and I have had long conversations about this, particularly in light of his concerns, and very real ones, about the safety of his congregants and the importance of keeping them safe. So we do have this underlying dissatisfaction with the ability of congregants to exit the church premises in the case of emergency. We note that Sampson is the closest street to the exit of the church at 60 feet. It's over 160 feet to Giffords. So we're hoping that the board has thought about that, or perhaps there's some understanding that could be made. The reason that it was asked that the entry to Sampson remain open solely during church hours was specifically for this. We are sadly in a state of affairs where there are, in addition to natural disasters, fires and the like, there's also a very real concern over active shooter situations and such. And so that was the sole concern with allowing people to exit onto a street safely. So I would, kind of say to the board, when we did get questions regarding why that was included, that's the reason we included that. Understanding the board's position with regards to traffic, which again is a separate issue, which we don't discuss right now. There is this very real concern over safety, and we want the board to know that that's the reason we asked for the open gate during church services, is for that reason.
But that wasn't a reason before, right?
Well,
so what makes this, what's a little odd about this is a new discussion, which wasn't raised before. Before it was, we want to be able to drive through.
Correct.
Easy, right? Then it was, we want to be able to draw congregants from Sampson and Schley. Then it was, we want to be able to have access from fire department apparatus. Then it was, now we want to be able to egress in the event of an emergency. So that's the part that is, sorry,
Chair, I understand all the points that were raised. However, this is where we are. And there is there is a pressing concern that the pastor has expressed in the record over his responsibility to keep his congregation safe. I find it hard to believe that the board would not recognize this and perhaps allow us for a path forward to not only conclude the application, but to conclude it in a way in which the parties can be happy with the conclusion of the type of application that we received. So again, we do make this request of the board.
So, but my question was, what do churches or houses of worship of all kinds do when they have only one frontage?
Well, I understand the chair's request during the executive session for precedent. I present the facts on the record with regards to this entrance to the church, this exit onto Sampson, and our ability to exit safely. We've got material in the record from safety consultants. We have our, consulting engineer for environmental purposes here as to whether or not there would be a realistic impact to allow people to get out in the case of emergency. I don't think there would be. We're asking that here in the room with the board now.
So, so the last conversations, this is why adding this safety feature doesn't sound genuine, because before it was, we want to be able to park on Schley and Sampson, and everyone's going to want to park there. That's where the overflow parking will be. And that's how we draw in the congregation to make it easier to come. And so they should be able to use the back gate. That's how it was phrased. And
Chair,
now,
I understand everything that's taking place today.
Right. So this is the part where I'm kind of, I'm not really getting this. I know that you can use safety as yeah. And
the problem is that the board has
I can allow the other, of course, the other commissioners can opine on this, but when you allow the gates to be open for the so-called emergency egress, you're also allowing the gates to be open for convenience to park on Schley and Sampson, which is exactly what the board has said it doesn't think should occur in response to community concerns. So
understood.
Right, you can't have only an egress.
We understand.
Unless it was some sort of a panic bar situation, which you can't do on a gate.
Excuse me, may I just make a comment, Chair? We have submitted several hearings ago, if you remember, from our security personnel, 3 letters describing the emergency concerns that we've had. This is not something that has just come up now. This is something that goes back in the record at least 2 hearings ago. You decided to dismiss those letters because they were congregants of my church. And yet these are professional security people, including a lieutenant from a fire department and 2 police officers who are my security personnel here in the church. We have been operating under these security measures for more than 29 years. We have experience doing this, which is why we submitted our concerns for emergency exit, which is only 60 feet away on Sampson Avenue. This is not a new issue. This is an issue that has come up in the past, but it seemed to be dismissed, and we never let it go. It was always included in our concerns, which is why we had discussions with the fire department, which is why they decided to have an emergency entrance and exit gate on Sampson Avenue. So please, this is not something that we're just bringing up now. We are on record stating our emergency concerns for our congregation.
So just to correct the record a little bit, the subject of active shooter was never brought up in the prior hearings. And if it was, I need to go check the transcripts, which we could do quite quickly, but I'm pretty sure active shooter was never brought up. It was fire department apparatus access, where fire department initially said, sure, having an access there is fine, right? But then they told us, as we know, because the fire department works with us all the time, their apparatus never pulls onto the site. They work from the street. So at that point, they said a pedestrian access for fire department with that special kind of key lock would be sufficient for fire department. And the subject of active shooter didn't come up. Yeah, Commissioner Shetta, go ahead. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. I just want to mention that, yes, this is the first time I hear about this safety situation or the active shooter thing. But if this is a concern and it's coming up now, I'm not sure if you're saying that you need a wider gate. That's my understanding. You need a wider gate.
No, they're saying they not a wider gate. They're saying they want to have that gate open all the time during services.
Yeah, I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
But they need a bigger gate on Simpson to allow, in case of an emergency, to allow people to escape, to have the option to either exit from Simpson or from the other side. Can we redesign the exits to allow one other exit right east of the building? So we as a board make sure that it's not going to be used for vehicular access. It's just going to be for congregants in case of emergency. And
I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean. Where do you?
Okay, yeah. Yes, 1 sec. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, here. Is it possible to allow, if people are inside and there is kind of an emergency, they can just walk that way or exit from the behind and come this way and exit from here, and they can provide a larger gate and it could be left open all the time. But in the meantime, we're making sure that it's not going to be used or utilized for vehicular access. Is that something that?
So wait a second. So I just need to clarify the thinking, right? What we had said before was no vehicular access from Sampson, period. Yeah. So that the only size of the access would be a pedestrian route for the fire department to be able to have their firefighters come in through a pedestrian width path and gate using this special kind of a key, right? Mm-hmm. So now what they're saying is they want to be able to have that gate free all the time during services. So in the event of a newly discovered rationale, which is the active shooter situation. So that's what they're asking for. So it's not for a vehicular access.
Yes, I totally understand. Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I think if I understand not providing a vehicular access unless fire department wants it, which we have not heard. I think to provide a pedestrian access, it doesn't have to be from that section of Lamoka Avenue, as Commissioner Shetta was saying. It could be oftentimes we do allow a pedestrian egress exit from the rear of the building. In this case, it could be more of a 3-foot gate that is there away from Lamoka Avenue, closer to the residential, one gate that is open during emergency. You hit a panic button, the gate opens and everybody exits out. and it is not on Lemoka. That way, the fire emergency apparatus, if it needs to be set up, it's set up on that Lemoka Sampson, and the rest are fleeing from the other side of the building onto Sampson at the same time Gifford. So that's a possibility that could be provided, rather than having, if that would allay the concern of the board.
So my question is, so I'm trying to understand this. So let's say they're in the
Madam Chair, can I ask Commissioner Shedder to not share this, but if you want to share C10?
Let me see if I have it open.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
I have the older version of it. I can share it.
or A1, the floor plan?
Yeah, just the site plan, the proposed site plan.
Yes, I have an
C1 dash
older
0.
version.
Yeah, so I'm referring to the northernmost corner of Sampson, where you could provide a 3-foot gate and just have an exit there for the congregants to exit during emergency.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, actually.
But so then in terms of okay, now I understand where you're getting at, but in terms of the concern about people parking on Sampson and Schley, what's the difference?
Well, you can make the door exit only.
Wait.
Right. So, Madam Chair, if it's only a panic activated door, it will only allow for exit during emergency. So nobody is going to park their car on Sampson and walk around Sampson all the way to Gifford and enter to only have the pleasure of exiting after the congregation is over. So if you only allow it for exit, it minimizes the issue of congregants wanting or desiring to park on Sampson, on Lemoka, or Schley.
So in other words, it's not the fire department emergency access route, or it could still have one of those locks on it from the outside. It's an operating only with a panic bar, and it's different than the other gate. That's the little pathway gate. Is that what you're saying?
Right, and make it only an exit. So it really makes it not so desirable. If our concern is not to have congregants park on Sampson and Schley, having it as an exit gate doesn't therefore make it attractive.
Right, and I think we can also make that a bit better with that panic bar that's connected to if that door is opened, it signals the authorities that there's an emergency in progress. Is this, I appreciate the concern. There are, and I'm okay with having an emergency exit that's only going to be used as an exit, because if it's open, it would, authorities would be notified, and if we can make that something that can't be turned off. But if active shooter is actually a reasonable concern of theirs, or something that a bona fide concern of theirs, there are several steps that they should be taking that has little to do with engineering right now to ensure the safety of their congregants.
And looking at this plan, we have an active shooter plan in place, always have, but this emergency exit gate with a panic button or some kind of a bar is actually against emergency requirements. As far as industry standards are concerned, any emergency exit gate must be able to be opened from the inside without key or any special knowledge. People need to be exiting, just quickly pushing the thing open. We will be held liable if someone cannot open that door because of a key, or the panic button doesn't work, or whatever. These are industry standards, which is requiring us, if it is emergency gate and the fire department has deemed it to be so, we need to have that gate completely opened and free during business or service hours. This is why, and again, it's for the safety and concern of my congregation. I've got little children in this building. I've got seniors and adults.
A panic bar is not something that is going to be a detriment to exiting. It's it's just like any other, it's just like any other type of bar opening door. But the difference is that it will trigger an alarm. And I don't see that as any obstruction, even to a child. They have those in schools.
Well, I get that, I understand that, but the reality is I have researched these requirements from industry safety standards. OSHA is one of them, and they do not require or mention that we should have any kind of a special knowledge in pushing a door open, whether it be a panic bar or any other apparatus.
If you were to trigger a knob, hold on, if we were to trigger a knob that works just like a regular doorknob, but only when they turn it, something goes off and it senses an alarm. Do you see that as any larger impingement than a regular doorknob?
No, as long as people could, as long as the door is opened, as long as there's no locking mechanism on the door. That's my concern. My concern is,
Excuse me, Pastor, I just interrupt. This is, you know, we egress from, like, there's a couple of architects in the room here, right? We egress from buildings all the time in a fire, where you go down a fire stair and you push the panic bar. There's a reason why they're called panic bars. There are many people who don't have dexterity in their hands. Children don't have the strength to turn a doorknob, whatever. The panic bar is a push bar, and it releases it automatically releases the opening. The reason you have a panic bar is so that no one can enter the fire stair from the street, because that would be a security danger if anyone could come into the fire stair from the street. So, excuse me, this is standard in the industry that a panic bar is how you egress to the street, and it's locked from the outside so no one can come in from the street. And it's often, very often, attached to a fire alarm system so that people know that there's been sort of a, what do you call it? A breach of security at that location, and therefore they know something's to be done. Yeah, Vice Chair Shana, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I think I want to direct this comment to Mr. LaBelle. You do know that, you know, you have seen the board work with all the applicants, especially with regards to, we do review a lot of schools, a lot of daycares in facilities that are mixed uses. And we are this board has taken security, safety, fire exits very seriously, and where it's needed, it is considered. And you know, these exclusive exits, fire exits, and all of those are very much in play and has been put in play pretty much in many of these very delicate operations with that require children, that has children there, some toddlers, some barely crawling even. So I think this proposal that the board is suggesting goes a long way in terms of the concern that we recently heard from your client, and I think you should consider it.
Okay, so again, to be clear, it would be an exit gate with a panic bar that would be alarmed.
Triggered,
very similar to how you would have it in a school.
Okay.
Think of it as a school. If that they are the most vulnerable population, even with the nursing homes, and where we deal with this. So think of it from that point of view, how the board would have addressed, and this is providing exits both on Gifford and also Sampson for those emergency purposes for the occupants, and also at the same time providing fire apparatus to access and do the necessary needful services.
This is Jeff Parker. Could I say something a moment?
Yeah, just 1 second. I just want to clarify, when we say to trigger an alarm, it's a trigger an alarm that goes to the fire to emergency services. It's a 911 call essentially, because that's what we're talking about. If you're really talking about an active shooter situation, that's a 911 call, and otherwise we're not talking about that. And so, and that is something also that's very standard in alarm systems, that they trigger authorities, not just make noise. Okay.
Yeah,
And
I
actually, I
think
just-
the only thing I'd say was I'm familiar with panic bars that are alarmed, which set off an alarm, so that's heard by everyone. I didn't know whether or not, for example, in schools and other institutions, that would go to a central alarm system, which would notify fire, like the fire department.
So, Mr. Lobel, so this is the first time we're learning in this situation about this idea of an active shooter. In the schools that we've heard, which we've heard recently, several of them, they never bring up, even though they're more likely to be concerned about this, they never bring up the subject of active shooter. So the issue of whether it triggers the fire department or 911 hasn't come up. That's actually school business, right? When we look at schools, we're concerned about strangers coming into the schools, and we want to make sure that there's no access from the street to strangers, and that there are cameras everywhere and special passcode cards and so on. So it's a different set of criteria. This is the first time we're talking about this as an issue. And so we're trying to address this issue based on our own experience working in security with schools. Okay. And so, and of course, alarms are often, you pay an alarm company, and the alarm company makes sure that it triggers to the authorities. That's actually how it's done. A fire alarm will trigger to the authorities. A burglar alarm will do the same.
And I say this for the record. In schools, their concerns are mitigated to some degree because they have safety personnel in that school. And if this is a true concern of the applicant, they should employ safety personnel as well.
We do. We have safety personnel, as I mentioned a number of times already, in our congregation. We have police officers, firefighters, and they take care of all of our safety concerns, which is why they wrote the 3 letters. And in those letters, if you want to reread them, we did discuss, and they did discuss the implication of saving lives for all different kinds of emergencies, including an active shooter. So this is, again, not the first time we're referring to this kind of an emergency.
I think maybe we can draw this to a close. I know Mr. Parker had our project architect had a comment.
Yeah, I did. Just that the way that the building's floor plan is, that the emergency access is all coming out towards the parking lot. The exit that is in the back is a secondary exit that you have to go through a room to get out of the building. So if we're truly creating an exiting environment, people would be flowing through the hallways, through that lobby. There's a secondary door in the sanctuary. They all come out towards the parking lot. When you're in the parking lot, this would just be like, if you think of a parking lot, like a corridor. Right now, it's a dead-end corridor that can only go in one direction. If that parking lot were inside the building, you'd want to have 2 ways out of that area. So if the one area is blocked, you can go the other way. So to me, if we're talking about safety and these kinds of terms, whatever kind of an exit door it is, that gate would want to be in the area of the parking lot coming out towards Sampson, so that would then fit in with the exiting out of the building.
Sorry, I'm not understanding. So shouldn't you, if you're really concerned about this situation, your only second means of egress is either, I'm just looking as we go around.
We have one secondary exit access that comes out the back,
right,
through
so
a room, and that,
right.
Otherwise, everything is.
So that's kind of what I wanted to say. Second means of egress through a room is not permitted. You have to egress through an egress route.
No,
So
you can have one secondary exit through a room as long as it's not locked.
But you
So you
have
can't go
occupancy,
through a kitchen or things like that.
but you have occupancy of 240 people in the sanctuary. How can you only have one means
The
of egress?
sanctuary has two doors. One comes out the side.
Where's the side? Oh, the side at the front. So why don't
Yeah.
you put another one so that it goes out the side at the rear? And
You-
then it would
you-
go directly to that point. You would actually have people sneaking out the back, which is what you want.
Well, if you happen to be in the sanctuary, and then the other issue we have is to try to create a handicapped accessible exiting, and our floor level is 4 feet above the grade everywhere. So we've mounted things up, and so that door where it is now, we have the ability to have a ramp coming out. So if you're in the sanctuary, you can, as a handicapped person, come out two ways. If we come out the backside, that door would be 4 feet above the ground, because it was originally built as a loading dock area. So the whole building's floor is up 4 feet from the ground. So right now we have it all mounded up in the front, so it kind of fits and makes everything handicapped accessible. Anything on the back, we have that narrow gap of space. We would have to build an outdoor ramp of concrete that has a railing, and then it would go downhill, and they look nasty, and it would be 48 feet long.
You're talking about a second means of egress, one that is, you have two means of egress already that are arguably accessible, because I didn't know that this one is a ramp that comes out the front. But
Yeah.
you also have, but we're talking about, so we keep mixing the discussion, right? We're talking about exiting in an emergency where you want to have as many people running down the stairs as possible, like out, right? And so if you want to get them out, and the best is to sneak them out, why would you want to go out the front door? That's where the bad guy comes. You would want to go out
where the bad guy is, but if you're in the building, you have to be in the sanctuary to have those two choices available to you. If you're in the building proper, if you're within a proper distance of the exit, the main exiting all comes out the front, and it's all barrier free. And so anyway, I don't know what more I can say about that, but I just wanted to share that that's really if you look at that front of the building, it's like an exit. It's like a corridor that leads out to a public access to two streets in two different directions. If I were in the building and someone was shooting, I'd be scared to death. And I'm not going to try to figure out how to go into a sanctuary to find another door unless you happen to be in the sanctuary.
Well, it's more like sorry, this isn't, I'm confused. You're more likely to be in the sanctuary. It's 200 and something people who can fit in there. And you have another egress from the children's programming area, which I actually don't understand at all in terms of legality, but never mind. You have another egress there. So that's also taking you to the back stairs. So you have then you would have two ways to sneak out the back of the building. And all the stories we always hear is the shooter comes from the front door. So you want to have everybody run to the back, they hide in the bathrooms, they do all those kinds of things, right? If anything, the only people who will know about those back doors are congregants, not somebody from the outside. I don't think we should go on with this, but yeah,
No.
Vice Chair. Go ahead.
The exit door in the sanctuary is considered, even though it's on the side in the front of the building, if you take a look, it is right in the back of the sanctuary, opposite the entrance to the sanctuary. So this is the back door. It is, you could see it, it's at the end of the building.
I'm sorry, Pastor.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, I think at this point, the direction that the board has given is that if the applicant sees the need for and the applicant seems to have convinced some of the board members that there is a need for an emergency exit onto Sampson for pedestrian emergency exit for to Sampson. And given all the direction and all the discussions and all the concerns that the applicant has heard from the board, I think they know where the board would be accepting of a exit way. We're not going to design this on the fly by saying do this here. We gave a suggestion. We don't know where the elevations and where the issues are, and the operations of the facility, where it will be. Anytime it can happen. It can be, when people are just gathering. It could be when everybody has gathered. When people are about to leave. You cannot lay out all the possible scenarios and therefore have multiple exits. If there is a need for an emergency exit, talk to the experts and figure out where the most applicable emergency exit that could be provided on Sampson Avenue. That's it. I don't think we should be going over the details at this point. Please work it out with your experts and come up with a couple of options.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair, we're happy to address the remainder of the comments made at executive session. I think foremost would be the application of zoning resolution section 2564 as it amounts to coverage of open space.
No, I don't think you need to, I don't want to debate it. This was, a calculation was incorrectly done. I'm just observing that. If you want to show us that the calculation is based on the wrong measurements of the parking area, fine. I think we did discuss that having no drive to Sampson is what is improving the amount of vegetation on the site. It would have been much worse if you actually had that drive continue all the way through. Vice Chair Shanda, is your hand still up again, or is that okay? Okay, so we don't need to talk about that anymore, though the calculation should be corrected to reflect a right amount of parking and to reflect the actual measurement, even though it doesn't apply in a community facility. I know that. We don't need to debate it. Okay. Anything else?
David, were there some comments on modifications to the plans?
I think we've covered it. I know there was some discussion about the landscaping, in particular, why the planting along the northern lot line doesn't run all the way up and stops at the commercial property next door. I know we have Kim and Jeff.
No, it's not commercial, it's residential.
And Pastor, you can discuss that property has been used for quite a long time as a commercial office.
Yes, it's both. Again, this property is both commercial and residential, and opposite that whole area on the north side of the building, we have planted evergreen trees in order to take your suggestion to completely cover the north side of the building from that residential property on Sampson Avenue throughout their whole backyard. They're going to see a beautiful row of evergreen trees that will cover the entire view of the building. And that's why we've chosen the trees and not the vines. And Kim, if you wanted to add to that, the reason for your suggestion.
Sure. Well, I think we decided it would be better for the building. It's not that the vines are not, they're actually quite invasive and they cause a waterproofing problem. So that's what I mentioned at the last session, that it wouldn't be suitable for this building. But we are doing the trees instead, which are clear of the building and should provide some, protection there, privacy. And it's my understanding also that the building is now clad. So I think they provided both solutions to make it more appealing from the residential side.
So you're saying, so the reason that you stopped the landscaping at the portion that you did, you're saying it's opposite a commercial building, the part where all the vines are growing up right now?
Yes.
That's part of the commercial building. Please, I'm asking Ms. Hoyt.
Okay.
Yeah, the trees are extended for the property, the residential property on Sampson. So we go to the end of that. We didn't consider beyond that because we thought that view shed was, protected.
No, because it is protected or because I said it was, it's not, I just said it because I'm looking
is.
at it.
Yeah,
I
there's
don't know.
two properties that are adjacent on the north end. We were, I thought we were all talking about the one on Sampson. So we go to the extent of that property.
No, but so the issue is,
You want to continue it.
yeah, why wouldn't you continue the vegetation all the way along the back instead of paving it? So, you know, a lot of this has to do with the advantages, your landscape architect, the advantages of permeable surfaces and everything that's great about plants, right? So, and it's also to respond to the, you know, basically the very blank facade that is in this residence district. So I don't know why you would stop it.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I respond to that, Chair? Because we decided to stop it there because adjacent to that area is a commercial property that has been up for sale for probably 10 years. And once that is sold, it's going to be a commercial development. And the reason why we haven't put trees there is because we're not sure they are necessary. The greens there are not necessary to protect that side of the building from view. So it's sort of an undetermined, commercial construction that's going to go there. So that's really the only reason why we've ended at the end of the properties, because you were mainly concerned, as we are, with the residents next door. And so it covers their complete backyard and view of the building.
Wait a minute. I'm not aware that that part there is a commercial property, but yeah.
It is.
I don't
It's been up for sale for 10 years as a commercial property. There's
But
parking lots.
But being for sale is a different thing than its current situation. Its current situation is mixed use, right?
No, my understanding is it has been used as a commercial property in the past, and its current situation is commercial. That's my understanding. And that's the way they have chosen to market the property, as a commercial property. I think it's 17,000 square feet, if I remember correctly.
Well,
And that's what's adjacent to our front part of our building on Giffords Lane, as well as the side northern part of our building where that tree line stops.
looking at the zoning map here. Can't find it though. Yeah, zoning map.
So, Madam Chair, I think you're referring to lot number 50, referring to lot number 29.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the site,
Yeah, I think it's lot 29.
yeah, okay.
Tax map, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, lot 29, it says a one-family dwelling on it. And it's part of that portion in the back is in a residence district.
Yeah, the lot is unusually deep. It's 142 feet deep, and about 125 feet of it is in the commercial overlay.
Right. So, but currently the land use map says it's a dwelling. It's a one-story dwelling.
But realistically, Chair, it is a commercial property. They've used it as a retail property in the past, and that's what it is today. And that's why they're selling it that way. So that's the reason why it's going to be sold as a commercial property. So it's just.
I don't want to argue this anymore, really. This is an exasperating case. Every single time we say something, there's a pushback and a new explanation. So let's just move on. I just don't want to deal with this anymore. Let's move on. Really exasperating. I just don't understand. Okay, let's move on to the next question, Mr. Lobel.
I think that may be the last of the questions.
Right, so-
Just gonna,
Yeah,
so,
Tony?
Madam Chair, do you want a correction to the EAS page 53, where they say it's a fire department access, it should be only pedestrian?
yes, and I want the changes made that I went through, yeah.
Okay, and then on the EAS page 24, the description is gonna be put in the restrictive deck and the rest of, right?
Yes.
Yes,
On the shuttle bus info?
yes,
Okay,
right? Yeah, and that the size of the gate is a pedestrian gate. It's being shown right now as a vehicular gate, the size of the gate.
Jeff, the size of the gate is what, 6 feet, you said?
6
That's not-
feet. It's
it's not
6 feet. It's matching the width of the walk.
Since when does a pedestrian gate equal 6 feet?
The sidewalk,
We're not gonna, please, every single thing ends up being 5 hearings because this is the response. A 3-foot gate is a gate for a pedestrian. A 6-foot gate is a gate for a vehicle, clear, okay? 3-foot gate. Let's not have any more discussion about it. I'm astonished by the responses on this case. All right,
want to go to the public?
yes, let's go to the public. Infuriating.
Okay, the case that we are discussing right now is 2019-265 BZ 60371A, 35 Giffords Lane, Staten Island. If you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. The Zoom webinar ID number is 966-0022-1805, and the passcode, should you require it, is 978190. If you've called in, you want to press *9 to raise your hand to speak, and *9 to raise your hand, and *6 to unmute. And if you are in the Zoom room already for this case only, please raise your hand by pressing *9.
Or raising your Zoom hand.
Sorry,
Everybody
Zoom
in.
hand.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Raising your Zoom hand, because nobody's called in yet. Okay, we also have open hazmat on this, so, and there was a modified parking demand study submitted. Do we have a response on that?
That was just for our record. That was being transferred. So it's only the open hazmat. We received the phase 2 report on Friday, and we're going to send that to DEP for review.
Okay, thanks. So in terms of the changes to the EAS and any of the other documents that are written, please provide us a cover letter that tells on what page a change was made so that we can find it and I don't have to search the entire document for a change. And ditto for the changes to the drawings. Don't circle the entire drawing, only circle what was changed, specifically what was changed on the drawing with a list of the changes. Okay, and of course we need the restrictive declaration. I don't think we have a draft of that.
We're happy to share that with council.
Okay,
Thank you.
that should go back and forth, right?
Understood.
Okay. All right then, I don't see anybody calling in. How much time to respond to this?
I would say could accomplish the requested changes and to consult with Pastor Gary, but I believe within 3 to 4 weeks should be sufficient.
Rich, this is Kevin, if I may.
Kevin,
So-
wait, you weren't sworn in.
Yes, just,
Yeah,
I'm not going to give testimony. I just wanted to discuss.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and respond to the board member questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So Richard, just a note, so the timing, so we have the remedial investigation report that was just submitted to DEP. It's by another consultant, and it indicates there's no, that hopefully they will agree with it and concur with the findings. Having said that, I want to make sure that the timing of the next hearing is one where you're able to close, right? We don't have to have yet another hearing waiting for an open environmental item. So Richard, maybe it might be helpful just to give it a few more weeks so we don't have to come back, and that will give DEP time to do their review. And obviously, if they indicate that they do want a remedial action plan, even though the phase 2 indicate we're below thresholds for quantities of hazardous materials. At least they give us a shot of closing at the next hearing. So that I just bring that up. Maybe we want to add a few more weeks. I leave it to Pastor and to you, Richard, to make that.
So Kevin, your best estimate would be what, 6 weeks?
30 days.
The DEP reviews have been delayed. They're taking longer than 30 days. So I would say at least 5 weeks.
Yeah, let's call it 6 to be.
Let's schedule it for 2 more months, all right, to give us the leeway that we need, because I agree with Kevin. We'd like to rectify this and so that we don't have to go to another hearing.
Okay. All right, I'm writing 8 weeks to submit. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Please comments.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is item number 22, 2018-188A and 2018-189A, 194-28 and 194-32 Dunton Avenue, Queens.
Oh, you know what? I was thinking we should have taken a break because this one might have a lot of testimony. Well, maybe we'll take a break after we have the first presentation. Let's see. Okay.
Frank,
who
is
are
there
you?
anyone with you?
I'm hoping somebody from Michael Kang's office can join us, but if not, I think I can proceed without him.
Okay, you don't have to be sworn in. It's an A case.
What would their name be? Do you recognize their name on the list, or can you see the?
I'm looking through it. I don't see anybody on the Zoom list.
I don't see.
So I'll proceed without them. I think I can answer all the questions. So good afternoon, or good morning. It's still morning. My name is Frank Noriega, here from Sheldon Nobel on behalf of the applicant. We listened to the review session comments, and I'd like to start off just by clarifying the ownership issue. Yes, 3861 Realty is an owner of all of the lots. They are a partial owner. It's a little complicated. They own 2/3 of the property interest in all of the lots. 2 other corporations also own a 1/6 interest in all of the lots, but not really relevant as far as it is. They do have ownership in both the 2 lots at issue as well as the hospital site. That being said, this lot was originally one tax lot, lot 52, I believe, and there was a subdivision filed with DOB for this. Because there's only one structure on the lot, they only filed one application, and we can submit the plot diagram that the zoning lots are, each individual tax lot is its own zoning lot now.
But wait a second. Now, you have to submit something to create a zoning lot. How is it a zoning lot?
That is the subdivision application, is my understanding, and that zoning exhibits aren't required in this case. And this is what I'd like the architect to confirm, and perhaps we could do a separate submission on this, that DOB in certain circumstances, when the zoning lots are individual tax lots such as this, they don't necessarily require zoning exhibits, and certainly don't require a restrictive declaration because it's not separate ownership. One that would require some sort of zoning lot description.
Sorry, that to file an application with the Department of Buildings, you must file a ownership. What is it? An ownership statement. What's it called again? A zoning lot description and ownership.
Thank you. That's
correct.
That's required for any permit, and until you've done that, there's no description of the zoning lot. We don't know what it is. So you haven't done. Nothing was recorded.
I will double check. My understanding, again, this is what I'm being told between the review session and this public review, that it wasn't required, but I will get some sort of confirmation or show the zoning lot exhibits, the exhibits 1 and 3, which you're referring to, which is the ownership, as well as essentially the plot diagram of the 2.
Until they're recorded, they don't. The zoning lot doesn't exist. It's an owner's essentially statement. It's essentially a declaration that the zoning lot is this, and that's what I'm applying for a permit for. So as of today, the zoning lot doesn't exist because it's not recorded against the property, and no filing was made to declare the size of the zoning lot. The reason that that's relevant or not is about whether we can decide on this application. Well, the fire department's asked us not to decide on the application, and my preference is always to defer to the fire department. They're the people in charge of the city's safety to one extent. Let's try not to avoid the subject question, which is, what are you going to do about the dangerous fire alarm situation or sprinkler situation in the building that the fire department is concerned about?
Yes, understood. The zoning lot issue aside, the applicant has been made aware of the violations for the standpipe and sprinkler, which were the two raised by fire department, and they are working to correct that. However, even in the fire department's letter, they note that it is not relevant to this application because it is a completely separate tax lot. The buildings are not combined in any way for the sprinklers or fire alarms. So we are committing to they need to address this. This is something that they could potentially get more violations for at that hospital site, and they are aware of it. They're working to correct it, but we're asking that this is not relevant to the application at hand, and we would like to proceed forward and hopefully come to a resolution as far as the 2 single-family homes that we're requesting to build versus the issues on site at the hospital.
Right. But the fire department specifically asked us not to decide on the application until something's done.
Understood.
So why don't you just do something?
They are currently working on it. But a violation of this type may not be rectified in a short amount of time. This is something that may take some time, and in the meantime, we're hoping that the board can grant to allow us to build these single-family homes that are not related to the hospital site. And again, I point out.
Sorry, they are. They're owned by the same owner, and the only way the fire department has teeth is in a situation like this where the owner is asking something, a special approval from the city of New York, at the same time as having $60,000 in ECB violations, and fire department very nervous about the safety of the building. So I don't think the other commissioners necessarily agree with me, but my feeling about this is no, your client needs to take care of this problem and to this fire department's satisfaction so that they issue us a letter of no objection. It is related. It's on the same development site. They're developing other lots. They can go ahead and be developing those other lots, or maybe they can't because they can't get a permit because of I don't know why. But anyway, they have the opportunity to develop all of those other lots that are not in the bed of the map street. So, go ahead and do that if that's permitted by whatever agencies are in charge of that.
Okay. But I just want to point out again that this is explicit language of the fire department that it has no bearing on the application before them. That's their language, not mine.
Their language is also, which I can't read because
they want you to, but they acknowledge that this is not related to this application.
So they asked us to do this, so we're doing it. Okay.
Well,
all right.
And I respectfully disagree, but we will move on. That being said, regarding the Clover Place, which I believe was the only really other outstanding issue, and whether or not the traffic would be affected by this, I didn't have a chance to go back and review the exact statements made by the public, but my understanding is that was only an issue if the Department of Transportation decided to redivert traffic somewhere else, and that wasn't actually a finalized action, and that the general public in the area wanted that Clover Place open up to another route to get to Dunton Avenue. But I believe you, Madam Chair, pointed out that this was the city doesn't actually own this property yet. It's still our property, and the condemnation proceeding would have to be brought to even possibly open up this street. And it not only affects the 2 subject lots at issue, but another property on Clover Place, which has that gazebo built that you mentioned before, and they would have to condemn all of that in order to open up this street.
Right.
But we have
understood. Yeah, understood. I just want to say that when this was discussed at the last hearing, we were informed that DOT would take another look at it, and we haven't gotten a response back. That's what I was talking about. We were reaching out to DOT to see if they were intending to take another look or whether they're done with it. We defer to DOT about what their plans are for roadways. So we're just going to check with them that they are standing by their position, because they were the ones who told us they wanted to take another look. Okay. So
Understood.
let's, sorry.
It should be at this point.
Someone is speaking. Please mute yourself. Everyone, please mute themselves. Vice Chair Shana, maybe. Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, Mr. Noriega.
No, I understood, and we appreciate that you would reach out to DOT to clarify that, and we have no objection to that. But other than that, I believe those are really the only outstanding issues, that with the fire department, and we can certainly get a clear-cut answer from the applicant as how they're proceeding with the violations, because again, they are committed to resolve them. We just don't understand if that can be achieved in a short order of time, and it's going to affect their ability to build these other houses again, which aren't really affected by the hospital building, but we do acknowledge they are in common ownership.
Okay, good. All right, then. So let's go to the public. Thank you. So go ahead, Tony.
Sure. This application we're discussing is 2018-188A and 2018-189A. This is 194-28 and 194-32 Dunton Avenue, Queens. You want to call in at 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 966-0022-1805. Passcode you need it is 978190. And if you're calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. And if you're in the Zoom room already, press *9 to raise your hand. Correct? Oh,
We have Mr. Bresky has his hand up.
That's the attorney for the neighbors.
Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Mark Bresky. We represent Housewood Civic Association, which is comprised of approximately 250 paying homeowners. And I've been helping this civic association and the community at large for approximately 5 years with respect to the overall project. And I'm sure the board is aware, as the community board and the local officials, as to the overwhelming opposition to the proposed development as a whole. Including the excluded lots referred to by the applicant. I attended this morning's session. I'm aware of the comments, and I wish to express on behalf of the Civic Association to Madam Chair our deep appreciation and gratitude for what we believe to be recognition as to what the community has been saying for over 5 years. Since this project began, the initial desire was to construct 19 new houses on what was originally referred to as historic lot 52. Only 6 have been constructed, and we've been taking the position that you can't simply isolate, this particular variance out of context. I apologize for the mistake in our letter. I should have started with that. With respect to the ownership, it was a misunderstanding. Apparently, it was the mortgagee that changed in 2020. We were unaware that this owner only owns 2/3 of the property, but there is a common ownership, which actually is helpful in this instance. Since the last hearing, we came across some other information that we believe may be relevant, and that may or may not touch on what Madam Chair was discussing concerning the issue of the zoning. We discovered that the information submitted to the Department of Buildings and Department of Finance relating to the subdivision of the parcel from the original larger parcel is incomplete. We annexed to our letter the application for mergers or apportionments dated June 18, 2019, which does not include the signature or date from the tax max specialist as required by law in order to make official tax map changes. We included the PD-1 plot diagram dated August 2, 2019, which does not show the bed of the map street in the diagram as required. And we also included the PW-1 dated September 9, 2019, which similarly does not include lot 61 on the tentative lot numbers for the subdivision. We believe these issues need to be resolved before any decision can be made by the board concerning this particular waiver application. But most important, and again, we recognize, and I think the board hopefully recognizes that neither the board nor the community has any realistic idea as to what is intended to be constructed on this property. And by virtue of the most recent revised statement of facts and findings, what we know, what the applicant concedes, is that there are only 6 homes presently under construction. We ask, why hasn't the applicant sought to build on the other vacant lots than seeking to prematurely use a bed of a map street at this point in time? And what also is curious is the ambiguity or vagueness concerning this hospital. We don't know whether the hospital will remain a hospital, whether it will be turned into, or the desire is to have it used as a school, whether they want to tear it down. We know that there are vague references in the revised statement of facts that the hospital is, open quote, currently vacant with no plans to change of use of the building, or the open quote, the vacant hospital building will not be altered at this time. And then with the additional statement, open quote, lots 154, 156, and 57 are proposed to remain vacant at this time. The words "at this time" are troubling to both me and the community, because before we determine what this entire property, which in our opinion should have been precipitated by a EULA process, the developer has basically sidestepped what should have been a large, complex land use process by doing what it did. And now this board is being asked to make determinations concerning issues relating to traffic. There has been no traffic study, and we just can't imagine how this particular issue, this narrow issue, can be resolved, or should be resolved rather, before we have an understanding as to what's being done, because we can imagine an enormous amount of options with respect to this vacant hospital, which has remained vacant for over 5 years. And we again bring the board's attention to the history of just dilatory, what we believe dilatory, bad faith, and illegal conduct that is described in detail by Holliswood's statement submitted to this board dated December 8, 2020, and outlined on page 2 in our letter. So we appreciate that what we now believe to be is the board's sensitivity, that this cannot be construed simply as one single 35 variance with respect to 2 homes, and should be considered in the context, especially in light of what Madam Chair has emphasized being the fire department's position, coupled with the history of just total non-compliance, in our opinion, to various laws, payments, incidents that have involved criminal acts, a lack of looking after this property, and just a total disregard for the rights of the community. So I appreciate you giving me the time and listening to us, and we hope that this variance, it will be denied or at least be tabled and be construed as premature, given the considerations that we've raised.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bresky. I just want to clarify what the scope of the board's review is. This is not a variance application. This is a request to build in the bed of a map street, and which is actually a New York State general city law waiver. And we largely rely on the Department of Transportation and the Fire Department and Department of Environmental Protection to tell us that this would be an okay thing to do, okay? We don't get involved in the rest of the application, which seems to be as of right, unless it isn't, but we don't actually know. The rest of the application involving the other houses on Lot 52 are not before us. We don't handle the subdivision review. That's either handled by Department of Buildings alone or by city planning, depending on where this is located and what the zoning requirements are. So, so in terms of your community, your client's opposition to this development and how the hospital is going to be used in the future, we don't get involved in that question at all. We're just looking at whether or not it's okay to build in the bed of this map street. And then because we always bring fire department in to check that this would be an okay thing to do, fire department expressed their opposition, which is why I'm directing the applicant to respond to the fire department's direction.
And I appreciate that, Chair, and I incorrectly used the word, well, I didn't use the word variance. I mean, I used the word variance rather, but I'm aware what your limited powers are. And the only other issue I'd like to make is that given that the fact that you do defer to the Department of Transportation, I mean, the only thing that I have before me is an August 8th, 2019 letter, in which the Department of Transportation indicates that while it's presently not in DOT's capital improvement program, this does not preclude a change in the program in the future. So I'm not certain whether or not there will be a different position or a traffic analysis, or do you simply just rely upon this letter from 2019 that I think was part of a bulletin that was submitted?
So we don't do traffic studies, and Department of Transportation does not request traffic studies of what are known as GCL 35 waivers. So it does not happen. Our question to DOT is, do they have plans to open up this street, and do they object to, and if not, do they object to a house or a building being built in the bed of the street? And that's the only question we ask of them. And it's for them to decide whether their road network requires the eventual opening of that street. So there's no, okay.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands up. So, Mr. Noriega, so you're going to need to get back to your client about how long to respond to this. I can just make a note that you're going to get back to us, and then we can set a continuation date rather than you guessing, because at the moment you don't know. I'm guessing, right?
Yes, absolutely. I will need to check in with the applicant and see timeline, what it would take to respond to this, and how we will respond to it, as far as if we think this is possible to get it completely closed out, or if it's just a simple filing to alter the standpipe and sprinkler application. But something will be done to address it, and we will. I'll reach out to the applicant to see how they're working on it.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes what we do get is once the fire department feels like it's far enough along and under their purview, then they send us their letter of no objection. If they're satisfied with whatever level that is, then they'll send us that letter, but we need the letter. Okay.
Understood.
Also, the ECB violations unless they're specifically related to the hospital building, because it's impossible to tell, those need to be paid.
I will look into that. Now, when you say specific to, I mean, all of them are associated with that specific tax lot? There's no ECB
No,
violations?
if it's a building that's going to be gut renovated and it has an elevator violation or a stairwell violation or something like that, the violation isn't affecting current occupancy. If on the other hand, the building is unsafe, which is not what I see, but maybe that's what they're getting at. If the building's unsafe and presents a danger to the community, that needs to be dealt with. Okay, so it depends on what kind of violations they are. And I just looked at the numbers, the amount of money that was due, I saw 60,000. So that's all I was interested in. Okay, but to separate it from violations that have to do with the safety of the public in general and violations that have to do with the whole entirety of the lot, if there's something that's supposed to be going on the entirety of the lot, I don't know what it would be. That's just what I'm trying to isolate, right? A boiler violation on an empty building doesn't matter because nobody turns the boiler on, right? That may not be the case.
Understood. So we will review the ECB violations on lot 52 and see how they relate to our site and respond accordingly.
Okay. Not just your site, safety of public.
Correct. Well, yes, the site as a whole.
Yes, correct. There you go. Thank you. All right. So you'll let us know in the next couple of days how much time you need to submit, right?
Absolutely. Yes, that is correct.
All right then. So it's 12:20 and let's take a 10-minute break before we come back to the next one. So come back at 12:30.
Thank you, Madam Chair and commissioners.
Everybody could come back, please. Okay, Commissioner Shetta, if you could come back, please. But otherwise, we have a quorum. We can start.
Okay, we're back on the record. This is the Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing for May 11, 2020, still 10 a.m. session. The next item is continued hearings, item number 23, 2017-145BZ, 241 East 59th Street, Manhattan.
Good morning, good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Anthony Mango for applicant.
Okay.
Are you the only one, Mr. Mango?
Yes, I am.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Anthony Mango of Mango and Icavello for the applicant. We reviewed the comments at the review session. It didn't appear that there were any substantive issues. I think there was a note about the signage revised drawing, that there was some additional language which we're happy to include in a revised drawing. Other than that, I didn't see anything else.
Correct. Okay. So let's go to the public quickly.
The application we are currently discussing is 2017-145BZ, 241 East 59th Street, Manhattan. This is for a PCE. The call-in number is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 966-0022-1805. And the passcode should you required is 978190. And if you're calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute to speak. And if you're in the Zoom room, please press your Zoom hand. I think you can also press *9, right?
No, if you're in the
Zoom,
Zoom, you're a Zoomer, you just raise your Zoom hand.
Zoom hands.
Yeah, if you're using a phone,
It's *9 and then *6.
Well, that spent some time that happily, so that's one way of doing it. So, Mr. Mango, how much time to make that one little change to the drawings, one little note?
I would think just a week.
Okay, so we'll try to, yeah, so I don't think we get you on a May 24th hearing, but the one right after probably, okay?
Okay.
June 14th? Okay.
Okay. All right.
Make a motion to close.
Do indeed. So motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Hi.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Shetta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Okay. And we'll reach out to you, Mr. Mango, with the date. Okay?
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you
you. Thank you.
Next item is item number 24, 2019-24BZ, 2721 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
If you're a member of the applicant team, please raise your hand in Zoom. We have a lot of registrations for this one.
So we're only accepting members of the team at the beginning. Anybody who wants to speak from the public, please hold off until we open this up to the public, okay?
Everybody ready?
No, I don't think we have everybody. At least I don't see Andrew Valari.
You see Austin. It is Andrew. Jay Emperor, George Tambori.
There's Andrew. Good. That's
Okay.
and Keith Striga should be here. I'm just assuming he'll be here soon. He's the only other person I don't see.
Mr.
Can we
Stein
start?
has, wait,
I'm
can
sorry.
you just, it just says Eric, can we write Eric Palatnik so the public can read who's speaking fully?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. And Elise, hold there while we're talking before the hearing starts. If you could reach out to Mr. Striga, as I don't see his, he's the project architect and I don't see him signed in. Maybe he has a problem of some sort. Just give me 1 second, Madam Chair. I apologize. We'll find out where he is.
Start without him. I'm texting him.
All right, that'll be great. If you could update the board and us where he is, because I'm sure they'll want to speak with him.
Do you want me to start?
Okay,
Sharon?
yeah, if the board is ready, then I guess we can commence. Just be alert that Keith Striga, the project architect, should be joining us shortly.
So you're gonna swear people in.
Yeah. Okay, raise your right hands. And unmute yourselves, please, the team. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Yep.
Everybody?
there?
I do. We didn't hear from everyone.
I didn't hear
I
from
do.
Jay. Mr. Emperor?
I do.
Colbert?
I do.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
before I begin, I just want to make sure that we proceed on the right tone. So I know Commissioner Sheta and I both listened to the hearing from the last time, and the tone from the applicant group was, let's just say, less than polite with the board. So I expect respect and proper behavior with board members, and anyone who behaves in a way that's disrespectful or barking commands to the board will be muted by me, and we'll just move on to the next person who speaks for the team. All right, understood? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Palatnik, do you wish to proceed?
I do. And respect is my middle name. Hello, everybody, especially all of the mothers. I hope you had a great Mother's Day. This was a Mother's Day like we haven't had in years. And it was big for the mothers, the fathers, and all the families. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Palatnik, please proceed with the subject at
I'd be
hand.
happy to. I was just wishing everybody a happy Mother's Day and hope they enjoyed it. My name is Eric Palatnik. I am the lawyer representing Plaza Auto Mall. If with me here today, you could tell are quite a few people who are here to help answer any questions the board may have, including Jay Amber of Bowler Engineering, who did the landscaping, Kevin Williams of Equity Environmental, did all the sound work. George Cambarakis, who just took off his picture. I like seeing his office with more paper than mine. He's the project engineer, and Commissioner Shadow, we spoke with him beforehand in the hearing, and he's here to speak primarily to your issues. Andrew Valari of Stonefield Engineering, who did all the traffic and reporting, and Elise Fullader of our office. Also with us should be Keith Striga, the project architect, who should be joining us shortly. He's not on at the start of this call. And Austin Corey, who is a scribe of Mr. Ian Rasmussen, our Ricardo Graphics office. He has slides that you could show if the board should desire. I guess showing respect is probably a good place to start. We want to thank the board, and particularly your staff member, Jella Prengla, who showed the utmost respect yesterday and coordinated an hour-long phone call with the councilwoman Farrah Lewis's office, who was representing her district adamantly, as well as it was of her office, was Matthew George Pitt, the deputy chief of staff, and Lisa Lashley, legal counsel, as she represented herself for Councilwoman Farrah Lewis. The call lasted approximately 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but somewhere around there, during which time all the discussion points that the board raised within a very brief review session a few moments ago, and of which, many of which were raised in some of the letters that the board received, the emails, I should say, and we couldn't quite tell where people lived in those emails, but we did see them. They give a lot of names, not a lot of addresses, but the concerns were similar, and the councilwoman's office heard them, so did we. So to answer the board's first question as to why we did provide the board with just the name and number of the contact person, as Ms. Pringle will tell you, that was the direct request of Lisa Lashley, the lawyer for the councilwoman's office. She asked us to provide, by the end of business day yesterday, to the Board of Standards and Appeals, the name and email address of a contact from Plaza Automall. And then Ms. Prengla asked after that in a follow-up email that we follow up that day with that, which we did, and she thanked us. And your whole legal counsel was on that email. So we thank you for facilitating that. We also want to thank the board for their review of it. Deputy Chair, Vice Chair Shampachanda, we heard your comments with respect to providing 6 queuing spaces on the ramp. And that, as you recall a few hearings ago, is why the whole parking layout was rearranged, was to provide those queuing spaces. So it's simply just an oversight, not showing the additional 6 on the ramp itself. But we did redesign about 4 months ago and put that ramp in and reconfigured everything to allow for the interior loading, the waiting of cars. So that's the 6 cars there. And we did hear Commissioner Chiavetta's comments with respect to the operations program with that I think he mentioned some concerns that neighbors he echoed in the review session. Those concerns that you raised were in fact the exact concerns that were discussed probably at 15 minutes in length, in-depth conversations with the councilwoman's office, representative of the board, yesterday was Joe Prengla, as well as their chief of staff. During that conversation, that was when the contact person was actually requested, as well as a name and an email address and a phone number. It was also requested the same thing that the board asked for, which you asked for, which is a programmatic explanation of what we can do to alleviate some of the concerns. So we have spoken to Mr. Rosati, who is the operator of the site. It's a family-owned business. He knows everybody personally, and everybody knows his organization. He's in the office every single day at that address. And he will be instructing his staff to be a lot more careful if anybody is in fact, I mean, these were just allegations. We don't know if in fact it's the case. This, as you know, is a very heated application. But nonetheless, he did instruct his staff to err on the side of caution and refrain from any behavior like that. Of course, nobody should be throwing trash out on the streets. And he agrees. And the councilwoman's office asked us if we could have weekly or monthly check-ins with them. And that's why that person was given the name and the number, so that we could engage in an ongoing conversation, so that commissioners and chair, if somebody should throw garbage out of a window or be any sort of disturbance to anybody, that there's a person to call. And we asked that of course, be included in the restrictive declaration, of course, as well, that we're working very hard on. So we hope we addressed 2 of the commissioners' concerns right there, the 2 that spoke earlier. We were very pleased to hear that the Commissioner Otley Brown doesn't have any further comments, and we appreciated your balancing act. I think that going to Commissioner Chiavetta, I think your questions are good, and we have Mr. Caracas here, who's a structural engineer. Of course, everything structural is, we're not here for structural, we're here only for building, for the use, but we'll get that. He's here. And yes, Chair. Yes, Madam Chair. Yes.
Need to correct the record. That was Commissioner Sheta who asked those questions, not Chiavetta.
I apologize. So he's here, George is here. We can start that conversation right now. And then, Madam Chair, I know you had a lot of questions, and I just wanted to say thank you, Madam Chair. I know you raised some concerns. We submitted some papers. I think we submitted our letter yesterday, and there was a lot of comments during review session about last, and we know that. But we wanted to thank you, because that submission was made in response to a 3-page single-spaced email we received from Jella Prengla. I believe it was written on behalf of the board in its entirety, with questions that we received last Thursday evening. We didn't, over the weekend, we all worked every day, including Mother's Day, all of us, to try to get that answer back to you, because we thought they were important and that you wanted to have a good conversation about this point, or at least Jella might have wanted to, or at least wanted the board to see the answer. So we only rushed to submit it at the last minute because we were responding to the Thursday email. But in the future, when we get questions ahead of time, we won't do that. We'll hold them in abeyance, and then we'll discuss them at the meeting. And we do apologize. We thought that's what the board's desire was. So having said that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. We have all of our professionals here, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's not that we don't want responses, but responses at 8 o'clock at night on the Monday, on the night before, we can't review them. So you hear commission at that midnight. I was too bleary-eyed. I get it.
And honestly, we all felt the same way Mother's Day morning, working on the responses while we left our families. So we feel it, but you sent it on Thursday. So we were trying really, really hard to respond as soon as we could.
So the difference is you're being paid by your clients, by the app. We're not.
So in the
So-
future, if the board gives us something a day before, 2 business days before a hearing, when would you like us to respond?
Let's not get into that.
I just, Chair, please, I want to respond to that. Mr. Palatini, during the past hearing, didn't we ask you to submit material related to the structural analysis of the wall? Did
Yes,
we,
and
or-
George is here. George, why don't you explain what you did so that you can explain yourself?
No, I
Thank you,
don't want
Commissioner
to hear what he did. I want you answer this. Did we ask your team to submit material related to the structural stability of the wall? Yes or no?
Yes, he did, and he's here to explain what he did and why he thought he answered you correctly.
Did
He's
you
here to
submit
explain.
anything before this yesterday's submission? Have you
George
submitted
is here.
anything
George
related
is
to
here
that?
to explain that, Commissioner.
Sorry. So, Mr. Palatnik, this is you evading Commissioner Shetta's question. I also listened to the the hearing the last time, as Commissioner Shetta did, and he did indeed spend
I
10
can
to
play it. I have it here
You
live.
did.
I can play it right now.
I watched the hearing too. You're right. And George is here to talk to you. So George, can you?
No, Commissioner Shetta's point is, we asked for it at the last hearing. You didn't submit it in time. And we only picked up the fact that it was not submitted late in the week last week, which is why a request to submit it was issued on something like Thursday, when we should have received it almost 3 weeks ago. So some of that is, don't pick and choose what you feel like answering, answer all the questions. We don't need to get into a debate about it, but that's the point is.
Fair enough. And Commissioner Shetta, you have every right to have your question answered. George, you hold that paper. Can you speak, please?
So one of the things that I'm also going to do is, if you interrupt anyone, I'm going to mute you, and I will move on to your consultants who maybe know better than to interrupt in the middle of a sentence. Okay, stop interrupting. Okay, so now I want to ask the question is one of my questions, and Jella, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, next time when I send an email like that, I'll clarify exactly what day or time it should be submitted by. I think that would be helpful moving forward. Yeah.
Thank you. So my question is, yes, it's very nice to provide a phone number. I already said this at the review session. Let's hear what the specifics are, other than saying to your employees, don't do these bad things. So one of the things that Commissioner Shabeta said was, what about, where are all the employees parking? We don't know for sure that those are the employees of this establishment parking there and causing these difficulties, but the proposal is to park all, I don't know, employees at this location, and also to park customers at this location. So you have, and as you know, I don't accept the idea of data changes. So you have 154 appointments on a Saturday, I assume of all 5 facilities, plus the service station. So service stations, right? So 154 appointments where customers are coming on a Saturday, and on Friday and Monday, it's something in the 50 appointments range. So you have this many customers, you have X many employees. I don't know the answer to that. Where are they all going so that they don't park on the residential side streets? This was discussed X number of hearings ago, where overflow of employees was supposed to be located at another location and then bused onto or shuttled or something like that to their various sites. What's the solution? And the person who should answer is probably not Mr. Palatnik, but one of the experts. I'm hoping Mr. Williams, Mr. Valari.
Mr. Valari, Andrew Valari, would you be able to communicate, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. For the benefit of the record, Andrew Valeri, Stonefield Engineering on behalf of the applicant. The answer to the question, where will employees park, is they will park in the building, either in the cellar or on the rooftop parking. There's 93 total spaces that would be available for accessory parking. And we want to use that to the greatest benefit to the community. So that means that it would get ideally all of the customers off the street and as many employees as possible off the street. It's difficult to say exactly how many of the 48 rooftop spaces would be dedicated to employees versus customers. The way we envision it working is that it would be a shared parking scenario. So if it were not a shared parking scenario, we would say there's an allocation of employees and customers. Let's say 24 for customers, 24 for employees. The issue with that is if there are less than 24 customers that show up on any given day, those spaces would go unused. And then what you do is you push employees onto the street. We want to use the parking at the facility on the roof and in the cellar to the greatest benefit. And that would be via shared parking. So to answer the question, who's going to park in this building? It's going to be a mix of both employees and customers.
So is there a tabulation of, based on the numbers you gave us previously, not on the change numbers that reduced the count down by something like 75%. So based on your original numbers of 154 appointments on a Saturday and 50 something on a Friday and a Monday, or maybe that was a Friday and a Sunday, I don't remember. How many employees are there on those peak days, and how many customers are there on those peak days who need to park, so that we get a sense of what is left over in terms of either of those things, and where are they going to park? That's the question.
I understand, but just to clarify, the 154 number of appointments on a peak Saturday, that was based on an older submission, and the new data that we have submitted is based on schedules of employees and their appointments that they had.
You can't change the data in the middle of the game, right? You start off submitting something, everyone checks it, there's doing surveys, they're asking around, all of that stuff, and then you submit data to this board and the board relies on it. So I don't accept, it's completely independent of what DOT is doing. I don't accept that first it's 154 and all of a sudden it's 24 on the most extreme day. If it were only 24, this huge auto mall would go out of business, because 24 appointments for 5 different dealerships makes no sense. So we're going with 154 and 50 and all of that stuff. You're using that data and you're answering, maybe you can't do it in front of us. You're going to answer that question. How many customers are there based on that data, and how many employees to service that data on those days? Where do they park when they've used up the 90, whatever number of spaces we're talking about, 92 spaces, okay? 96 spaces.
All right. And then respectfully, I can't answer the question.
Andrew, can I interrupt you to ask you a question, Andrew? When did you mentioned you gave new data. When did you submit that data?
That data was submitted November 20th, 2020.
And have there been hearings since then on it?
I think there's been 2.
Thank you.
Mr. Palatnik, we're not going with data that reverses the entire analysis up until then. I told you that. That's like, has been described as shell games and things like that in other hearings. Once you submit the data, that's the data. And it's different than when DOT says you're using modeling. It's different. Those were not models. Those were based on surveys. So a survey is a survey. You can't all of a sudden switch to a different survey. So again, it makes no sense that an organization that has 5 different dealerships only has 24 appointments on the biggest day of the week, a Saturday. Makes no sense from a business perspective. And so, but the 154 does make sense. 5 different establishments and 5 service centers where you yourself have pointed out that there's a queue into the street for people awaiting service at the service centers. So let's not debate that we're not debating that anymore. I just want an answer to those questions, which you don't have to answer now, but you need to answer so that we have a plan for the community. Where's the excess parking going to go? Because we talked about previously that employees would park at some vacant lot or something like that this owner owns, and that's where it should happen. And there needs to be some kind of shuttle service so that employees are not parking on the street. And if it's a 50-50 split or something like that for customers, we need to understand what that is. Okay, please don't go back on this whole data thing. Okay.
Understood. I completely hear you. I hear where you're coming from. I understand the logic and reasoning. I think the benefit of the application remains the same, though. We have an as of right application that generates these employees and customers that, they park where they park. The benefit of the application is that there would be 48 additional parking spaces on the rooftop of this. Should this board look favorably upon the application, that would be the impact of the project. And, that's 48 less that park on the street. And we see that as a benefit.
Correct. I'm not arguing with that, and I've said that before, but we have almost 30 letters from the community. We have the community and the council member and so on, all involved in this. This is an opportunity for you as a traffic specialist to work with your client to come up with a solution that will be lasting, and that the solution not be a telephone number. Telephone numbers don't work. We've seen that in other applications or in other cases, all right? Because, by the way, I think having the truck loading zone was a really great solution, right? The DOT thought so too. How long did it take you to come up with that? Until we forced the issue, there was no solution. There was just, that's the way everyone does it. And now we have an actual place where the car carriers can park. So my next question is, the car carriers, according to your information, the car carriers come and pick up and drop off 5 times a day. But your information also says that that's in off-peak hours. I don't understand how that can be off-peak if it's 5 times a day. What's off-peak? Be specific. When are the hours? And by the way, that could be something that's scheduled. Does it happen on a Saturday, which we've learned is probably one of the worst days of traffic congestion? When we see the submission, there was one person who submitted a comment, which was that he is an ambulance driver or something like that, an emergency responder for hospitals, and that roadway is blocked. What time are we talking about? How do you arrange these car carriers to come when it's not going to be impacting the streets? And also, what happens to all of those unlicensed, those cars without license plates that have been parking on the street? And that's illegal, by the way, to park a car without a license plate on the street. Where are those going? How is that being handled? Just, it's a problem to be solved by an expert such as yourself.
Sure. So to answer the question, when is an off-peak time? I think that with the recent approval from the DOT to permit the truck loading zone, it may not apply as much. It may not be as significant here because we are providing an exclusive loading zone that they could use at any time of day that's away from the travel lanes. So, previously they would load and unload these vehicles in the street. Now they can do such along the curb line, which is out of the active travel lanes. So, when do peak times occur? I'm not sure it even matters anymore because they have an exclusive loading zone at all times for their use. Actually, it's for the public. Any commercial tenant on the block could use such. And also, just regarding the frequency of deliveries. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think we knew that. Any commercial vehicle on the street can use it.
Right,
So,
public right away.
So then how does that work? The carrier comes, And there are 3 furniture trucks parked there that are doing whatever it is a furniture truck might be doing, because they're allowed to park in those locations if they have the right plates. Right?
Yes, Andrew, if we could clarify for Madam Chair, and as the board knows, Plaza Auto Mall operates substantially the majority of the street. So it's and there are no furniture shops anywhere nearby, and very few, or who would want to unload heavy objects blocks and blocks away and transport them. So it's more likely than not, given the predominant use on the block is Plaza, that the only business that will be using it, and they do have relations with people around them, and the councilwoman's office is involved. So we feel it's really going to help things out. It's not a situation where we feel where there's a bunch of competing businesses on the block that would try to compete for this space. Andrew, you could echo me maybe?
No, that's correct. I agree with that. What I meant was that it's not exclusively for Plaza Auto Mall. However, it's on a block that is both sides Plaza Auto Mall, north and south along this block. It's all Plaza Auto Mall. I don't think that it's very likely that there would be 3 furniture vans or trucks that would be parked there, 24 hours a day. It's predominantly for the car carrier delivery. We expressed that in our initial inquiry to the DOT, and like I said, that was approved. So just transitioning to the frequency of deliveries, this is based on demand. So it depends on how many lease return vehicles they have, how many vehicles they need to get offsite to this block. I mentioned in my report that there was a range of anywhere between 3 and 5 in the day. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's 5 every single day. But really the benefit of having that exclusive loading zone is that there will be curb space available such that they can load and unload along the curb line, as opposed to what presently happens today. And it's been well documented.
Huh. So there are other businesses across the street. This isn't the only business, right?
No, I had said that there are a few others. They're relatively smaller types of establishments, and not the type that's going to warrant massive amounts of deliveries. We can get you a list of what those uses are. I think there's an auto-related use and a couple of other smaller establishments. Yeah, but we can get that for you. I'll look online at the same time if you'd like, and I could supplement the record as we speak. But it's mostly local retail, the likes of which wouldn't require an 18-wheeler delivery to sit there for hours and hours to offload. No different than anywhere else in Manhattan or Queens or Bronx or Brooklyn. Everybody gets a couple deliveries, but the smaller shops don't get big tractor trailers for the most part.
Huh. Okay. So when the carriers are offloading, where do the cars go?
It depends on where they're receiving a shipment from. They may go into one of the dealership buildings. They may go up the block where there's a offsite parking lot. It really depends.
Up the block where there's an off-site parking lot.
Yes.
So when we look at photos of the site, for instance, right now I'm on Google Street View, right? There's lots of cars that have no plates parked in front of this establishment and the others. Many. There's one actually now I'm looking at, it's double parked in front of a car that has plates. So I guess I asked the question again. We know that it's illegal to park an unplated vehicle on the street. What's your solution as an expert in this subject for eliminating the parking of unplated cars on the street? You don't have to know the answer now, but that's a question, okay, that should be answered to cure the nuisance that is being complained of, right? As opposed to leaving a phone number. Okay, you don't have to answer it now. Please, Mr. Palatnik, don't jump in with the answer. I really want it from Mr. Valari, who's the traffic expert. Thank you. Okay, so you don't have to answer it now. Please don't feel pressured into doing that. All right,
Thank you.
but I have lots of unplated cars just in this Google Street View image that was just taken. Actually, it's April 2021. And so if we don't know where those cars go, They're supposed to go inside the buildings or onto the lot. So how do we make sure they go inside the building or onto the parking lot that you described and not in the street? Okay. This is all going to an operational plan that I want to see created that will be included in the restrictive declaration, okay? Okay. So, let's see what else. Those are the main questions that I need answered right now. Oh yeah, shifting to the noise. Or maybe Commissioner Sheta, you want to talk about the wall because the noise is irrelevant if we don't have a wall. You're muted. You're muted, Commissioner.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, I want to listen to their feedback on what I said during the executive session.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Sheta. I heard your comments, and we will elaborate on. You had certain numbers that you wanted us to elaborate on and where we got them. We'll elaborate on that wind pressure. We'll elaborate on those reactions. What other notes did I take here? We will also have the final design for the fence posts and the fence material. The fact that we showed a tube section versus a wide flange shape was basically it should probably, it's just going to have to be a larger wide flange shape, around maybe either 6 or 8 inches. So we'll correct that. It could be made with a tube shape, but I understand the fence consultant, that diagram that they showed was like a typical detail. You know, like you pointed out, it was showing the posts going into sonotubes and, you know, into the ground. But because this is maybe not a typical post installation, you know, that's basically being mounted to the face of the wall, but we'll probably just change it to a wide flange shape for next time. And as far as the top reinforcement in the retaining wall footing, that I'm not going to lie to the board. It was either didn't check it, the drafting carefully, but that was meant to be top and bottom. So I apologize for that. We're going to correct it. You may think what you want, but you know, again,
No. It's nothing. It's nothing bad. Nothing bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The feedback I got last
I
hearing.
didn't want to like bamboozle you. No, I'm just telling you the truth. You know, we missed it a little bit. You know, and
I'm sympathetic with you. I know where you're coming from. I'm sympathetic with you. I totally understand the situation.
Yeah.
You wrote post by others. I understand that you don't want to like step into somebody else's limit. But when I'm talking to the applicant, I'm not talking to George or Eric or John or Smith. I'm talking to the case. When I asked for something, I needed to be provided and provided right. I'll make it short. What you provided me with in this submission is nothing related to what I asked for. I didn't ask you to check the retaining wall for me. All what I asked is check the post, the panels. And I totally understand these might be done by the fence installer. Okay, talk to the guy. I'm not talking about you. When I say talk, I'm talking about whoever is in charge. Mr. XYZ, talk to the installer of the fence, have him provide you with calcs justifying that if you space the post 10 feet apart with this kind of section, with this kind of panels, with these kind of calculations, this wall is gonna survive. It's not gonna fall on the backyard of the neighbors. That's what I asked for during the last hearing and 2 hearings before, and that's what I'm asking for in this. And I totally understand it could be a drafting mistake. The reason I pointed that, because of the obligation from the Board of Professional Engineers. If you see something, say something. And I saw that you were missing a reinforcement that could make this wall crush. It could break. If you do not put this top reinforcement and wind hit from left to right, like you showed that, this wall is gonna crack and probably it's gonna topple. And in addition to that, like step 101 for me is I checked your reactions and they were off by 20%. What I got is more than what you got. Just when you check something when you're a staff engineer, I used to do this, run the numbers, do not buy them. Thank you.
Okay, and I will, and when I make this resubmission, I guarantee you'll have more than the night before to check this.
And I saw the calcs that you submitted were actually signed and sealed on the 6th. If you finished on the 6th, they should have been submitted to us on the 7th to give us some time to look at it.
Yeah.
Not yesterday,
I'll
near
get it to you
midnight.
at least a week before. Okay.
Well, actually, no.
Understood.
All of these submissions that we're asking for at this hearing now need to be submitted on the submit date, which is actually almost 3 weeks before the hearing. We do that intentionally so that we can review it, and if we see something's missing, we can ask for the missing thing. But we don't expect anything to be missing when we ask for it very specifically at the hearing, which we've done again here. Right? That's the reason for the 3.5 weeks in advance, or 3 weeks submission in advance, is if something isn't clear or something, needs a little more beef to it, something like that. That's why we have the submission so far in advance. So please don't skip anything that we ask for. Okay?
One more thing, drawing L-004 by Bowler. It's good practice if you have multiple disciplines working together. It's good. I used to do that. It's good practice to circulate drawings from different disciplines to others to just take a look, and probably you have some conflict, you have some interference. So this detail on that drawing L-004, where it shows the I section on the fence with a light pool type footing, that like a small pier footing, cylindrical pier. This is not in play at all. When you put this on a kind of drawing in a project like this, that gives us the impression that there is no coordination whatsoever. Everybody works in his isolated world, and then somebody just blindly gather these kind of things and throw them to whoever is going to look at it. And that makes us suffer. Late nights, like I said, it shouldn't be like that.
Understood.
Engineers in this country build skyscrapers, right, Eric?
I'm hoping New York City is going to build the biggest skyscrapers the world's ever seen in the next year.
Okay, never mind. Not relevant. Okay. All right. So I do have another question. Tony reminded me of this question. This is again from Mr. Valari. Why, if you're going to have employees parking on the roof, why is it valet parking?
Because of the operation of the elevator.
Could you explain that a little more?
Well, not everyone knows how to use a vehicle elevator. And that would all be operated by someone that knows how to use it very well.
So a lot of these employees are not the ones who are driving the cars around and kind of automobile experts.
No, you have sales staff. Doesn't mean that they know how to take apart an engine, put it back together. You have clerical staff, accounting staff. It's a major place of employment, Plaza Auto Mall, and they have a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life that, we feel that it would actually be best to handle vehicles going onto the roof from a trained staff.
Okay, so you just pointed out it's a large employer. So it means that we do actually have a number of how many employees there are. And I want to again clarify that this is for all of the employees That's what is stated in your materials. All of the employees from all of the various establishments that are connected to this are potential parkers in this structure. It's not just devoted to this one building that only has 20, or only has a showroom of 20 something cars, right?
Correct. It would handle a large majority of the employees. It would not handle all of them. That wouldn't leave space for the customers. And this is a customer service oriented business where we'd want to, you know, put some priority towards that. So it would handle a majority of employees, but, you know, not everybody. The materials didn't say 100%.
No, so that's what I want to know. How many, I've already asked you that question. How many employees, where will the rest of them park? Ideally not on the street. How can we handle this so it's not imposing, as we learned, on the public, on the neighbors in the residential portion? Okay. Then my question then was about the sound attenuation. Who's the person who's handling that? Is that Kevin?
Yeah.
Mr. Williams. So the response that I got yesterday was quite odd.
Chair, forgive me for the nomenclature on you know, referring to it as a courtesy. I should have edited that when it went out for distribution to the team, and that really doesn't properly encapsulate the you know, an effective way to communicate the attenuation of the wall. And so, if you remember when we started this many submissions ago, we had a 10-foot area, right, when we had stackers and an elevator in a different position, and it was just a much more cumbersome from a noise perspective, as well as a traffic perspective, a heavier lift. And we had posited you know, basically an application to a fence to attenuate the noise then. And as the chair said, this is not enough. And yes, so the wall is at the request of the board. And I want to explain why it's not per seeker. So based on our study, and if I may just share my screen, I think this will help. This is the kind of the same thing that we had on another application. And I just want everyone to understand the methodology very briefly. So let me, if I can, just share this. Can everybody see the aerial here?
Yes.
All right, of the existing roof. So the first thing we did is we took an ambient reading at the you know, that basically at the lot line at the building edge. And then we also were asked to come back and do a weekend reading as well. So we have two readings, and both of them indicate approximately the lowest level that was encountered was 54 decibels, and there were a high of 58, I believe. And basically the idea is that we basically made that the imaginary sound level all along the edge. And then what we did is, and I know you've seen various iterations of this, and we went through a lot of back and forth with DEP because this is a type of noise problem that they have not encountered specifically. And for something like this, you know, where we have, you know, the parking area as designed, you know, the noise sources are distributed right along, you know, along the whole roof. But the way that can you see the plan here now? Yeah. So the idea is we took the parking accumulation that was done, which actually only showed 17 at a peak hour. We grew that to 25. So 25 trips up and down, you know, an elevator and down an elevator. And we took those and we took all of the little clicks and the door closures and the elevator moving up and down for 5 seconds. And basically took that all and made it into a sound point. Basically, like all of those sources, you convert all those instantaneous noise sources into what's called an LEQ, which is an average over an hour per the seeker technical manual and per noise code requirements. And we basically went and then applied that actually at the edge of the building and here, and said, okay, now what is the additive noise? So we didn't just say, okay, the noise over here is this, and the noise in the left corner is that. We literally basically took all of those, and this has basically been approved by DEP. They only have a question in terms of our memo on the wind issue that we encountered on a Saturday, but I believe that's going to be fine because our weekday sources were sort of commensurate. So that was really the only issue in terms of the methodology. And what those findings indicated is that when you do this fairly long additive algorithmic equation with all with all of these sources, and I can show you where that's at, just to put the pieces together here. So we took these are all of the events averaged by, multiplied by 25. So we come up with a 58.6. This is with all of these measured pieces added together. And then the lowest level is 54. That's a 4.6 decibel difference at the sensitive receptor. So the threshold for impact and needed attenuation when the noise generation is below 60 decibels is 5, meaning, if this was a seeker problem, we would not have to actually provide attenuation. So by courtesy, I should have said at the discretion of the board. And the other thing is we acknowledge that even though we're averaging this, what's called an LEQ, that there are impulse noises, right? That could be annoying. And so we have this very robust sound barrier, 39 STC. So literally what's going to result from this is lower ambient noise than what's currently encountered, thereby a fairly significant degree. The building is already, with parapet wall and everything, is already attenuating noise on Nostrand to some degree. This will even go a step further to building goodwill. So this is really the point that we were trying to make is, even though per seeker, which is what it is, to be prophylactic and per the consideration of the board is to provide an attenuation wall that, if you have outliers, if it's a rough day, if somebody goes nuts and starts honking the horn, this is that extra 30 decibels of attenuation is going to really make it quiet in those back areas, along with the setback that's required. And then, so the other question that I think that you had allied to that is, what about the bleed at the corners? And so this I also wanted to just address with reference to the site plan. So the bleed from here and the bleed from the other side. So just keep that in reference. And then if I go back to the aerial, so it's 60 feet to the nearest receptor. And the closest noise generating source has about another 10 feet. The elevator is there, which would be concrete block wall. The sound exposure is in the opposite direction. So, and also this would be below the threshold. So in addition, the bulk of the movement is away from that location, and the same thing here up in the corner. So it's our, statement that any bleed in the line of sight here with the parapet wall and the fact that the bulk of the activity is still another 10 feet away and isn't encountered on the rest of the roof, that you're not going to have a perceptible noise bleed on either this location. The closest source is 71 feet. So I hope that answers some of the thoughts here.
So with respect to the noise bleed and the impulse noises that are in the 75 decibel range, how does that, I understand this idea of merging together and coming up with an average, but what about the effects of the actual impulse noises on those bleeds?
Well, so let me characterize it this way. When you're talking about 17 vehicles up or 12 vehicles up and 12 vehicles down over an hour, and you're talking, and even if you assumed all 24 or 25 of those had door closures and even honks, which we've operationally said are not going to happen, we've included that anyway. The amount of that noise exposure compared to the 700 cars that go down Nostrand Avenue, it's just not a perceptible thing. Having said that, the client is already willing to put up this sort of magnificent rooftop, addition to the back of this. I mean, it's not going to show any significant sort of perceptible impact, but to the concern of the chair and to Commissioner Sheta, if we were to run, maybe 10 feet here and 10 feet on the edge here and to return, if that would satisfy the board, I think that's basically one more panel on each side, and would certainly add an additional, like, so the reduction here where we measured it. So just so you understand that, because we weren't able to get an elevator reading, we could not get a developer to allow us, an elevator operator to allow us to do a reading. We posited an 85 decibel level elevator for 5 seconds, which is way beyond what is out there in modern elevators. If you go to an old building, in the Upper West Side or something that has a parking garage below the building that was designed to carry, something back in the 30s, that's a loud elevator. These things are all below like 55, but we could not get scientific data on that. And so that piece here, is relatively quiet. So not use like any more words. Basically, the changes are nominal, in terms of the decibel difference. Having said that, if you put, a couple extender panels here on the edge, on particularly on this side where we have a receptor, that would effectively block the movement of the vehicles and the noise generated, beyond the elevator wall. So, I mean, that I think we would be willing to consider that. I don't want to speak for the applicant, but.
So I see Commissioner Sheta's hand up, and I'm going to predict a little bit of his response, but so that's why I'm looking for another potential solution like that. I think there might be a concern about how you install this thing to make that 10-foot return there. And I'm
so
curious.
I did want to just note, Chair, that it's 4 pounds, 3 to 4 pounds per square foot. This is not a heavy wall, and also, but I'll listen to Commissioner Sheta and see what his concerns are.
Let me just finish. His concern isn't about the weight of the wall. It's about it becoming a sail that ends up in somebody's backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I get that. And so I'm just looking at, for example, the design of the elevator, which it's an enclosed box, right? And you can only exit towards Nostrand. So
Right.
It seems like the elevator itself is a sound barrier.
It's an attenuating barrier. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the other side, there seems to be on the drawing something different than what we're seeing in the, or maybe not, I don't know, seeing on the aerial, that there's also another staircase on the roof. Is there something missing from the roof further to the, whatever that way is left?
Yeah, there's one here and there's one here. There's 2 existing stairs.
Okay, there isn't one further towards the edge of the property. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually the point, Chair, is that, this definitely serves as a barrier. And then there's only a few cars. So most of the activity is occurring out here. And so we didn't feel it was necessary because, even though we have 4.6 decibels, say at this point, as a worst case condition, really when you look at the operations, there's a little bit of a buffer here. But like I said, if it was desired by the board to simply close off this area, right, between the planter wall and the elevator, that's a relatively easy fix. And then you get about 20 more feet of return on this side in terms of a wall.
Okay, so let's hear from Commissioner Sheta, because I suspect he's nervous about that solution. Go ahead.
Fair enough.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm open to like doing that. I believe it would be helpful to mitigate noise. This is from the noise perspective. But before I proceed to the next point, Mr. Williams, you you indicated that you did some kind of like equivalent noise source analysis. Is that what was done?
Yeah, it was pretty painful because you have all these various, we had to take 5 different cars, right, with different engines, do their ignitions, do the door closures. Each one of them has a different door closure thing. So yes, yeah, we had to, and then we had to assemble all of those using the rooftop demand, and then come up and then basically convert what those are called L max numbers, a max noise exposure at like a certain distance. And then we had to convert those to what's called an LEQ, which is the measurement that DEP uses to determine an impact.
Okay, and that was okay with DEP, right?
Yeah, so the methodologically, they approved it. So they only had some very minor comments on there were 3 comments, and 2 of them were editorial, and one of them was, questioned the Saturday reading, which we had to do desperately because we had no other times, no other Saturdays, or snow and everything. And so it was windy that day. And I made the point that, wind in terms of its effect, noise is due to friction. And there, here on the rooftop, there's really very limited sources of friction that would like bend around a building or whatever. So, we'll determine whether or not they'll accept those numbers. But yes, they've accepted the framework of the analysis.
Do you recall on top of your head what is the value for this L equivalent as it compares to the maximum and the minimum noise events?
Yeah, so 58, absolutely, 58.6. And I'll just pull up the worksheet. Give me one moment. Here we go. Yeah, so the maximum, so the measured event LEQ, cars LEQ, and ambient LEQ is 58.6. So this is like all of the events plus the ambient noise level. And then basically what you have here on this column are the max, so the SEL max level. So, and then how many, so the elevator at 79.9 times 24 hourly occurrences, 5 seconds each, we're for each one of those events, and then they're multiplied. And then car starts. So that there's 17 cars max up that would, or sorry, going down that would ignite, and so, and that each one of those starts is 1 second at 71.6. So that's kind of the framework of the door close at 61. And these are those, we took the worst event, by the way, of each car. So, or truck in this case as well. So it's literally worse upon top of worse upon top of worse. The only difference, I think, Commissioner Shetta, is, your concern, right, that a max event and a series of max events is not something that's picked up by the secret technical manual. And this is when we have a 39 STC wall, you could take, and by the way, this is the sum of all of these SEL events. But if you were to take the car lock chirp, which, as I want you to remember, we've operationally eliminated, right? But in the event that were to happen, if you subtracted, say the wall is designed as 39, but it only has 30, right? That would drop it down to 51. So, in a way, what the board is doing is they're protecting against outside events. And I recognize the fact that this is a very extrapolated math problem trying to represent reality at a worst case. But yeah, so that kind of, just so you get an idea, if you were to attenuate with the wall. So none of these, by the way, these 58, none of this includes the wall. None of it.
Yes,
this is the naked number without the wall. So 58.6, not even including attenuation. So that's what, when I say the end result, even if you think somehow we haven't erred on a conservative side, is that this barrier will in fact reduce the ambient readings, that the exposure on these residents. And that's maybe one more positive thing if we get an increment of cars coming out, and we're helping to reduce the ambient noise coming from no strain and the rooftop as well. So.
Understood. So what you did is kind of like a weighted average for different noises. I just want to mention two things. Number one, considering that the noise levels could be as high as 84, 81, 75, I wouldn't call this barrier a courtesy at all. I wouldn't do that. It's definitely needed. The other point that I want to mention is if you're gonna do these, if you're gonna throw these extra 2 panels to make sure that you block the line of sight to the neighbors closest to the corners of the building, I believe these kind of like extra 2 panels each side are gonna be needed to installed on top of the parapet unless they wanna build. I don't think they can build another piece of retaining wall there. So they're gonna need to put them on top of the building parapet. If this is gonna be the case, George, please listen to this. That wall 10 feet tall on top of that parapet is gonna give you a torsional bending moment, torsional moments to the edge beam of that building. This is not a joke. This is 10 feet tall. Wind is gonna hit. And if you do not look at this edge beam carefully, I don't know what's gonna happen, but you need to consider this seriously. If 2 panels are gonna be installed on top of the parapet, each corner, that beam need to be carefully looked at.
That, see, I predicted, see? So right, so obviously structure will decide whether or not those return panels can actually be done realistically. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. Actually, Mr. Williams, I don't know if you have handy, but because I suspect we have neighbors watching, can you show the section through the building that shows where the wall is located? I don't want people to think that it's going to make the building taller. It's actually set back 30 feet from the rear of the building. And
I mean, one moment, I'll pull it up. I don't think I have that section in my report, but I do have it in my archive.
Okay. So it's just that because we keep talking about this wall, which is quite tall.
Right.
And I don't want people to think that it's making the building taller relative to their houses. It's not, probably won't be visible from their houses. It's set back 30 feet.
Well, this is the only one.
If you cannot show it, I can put it on the screen. I have it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Jump off, Mr. Williams, and then yeah, there we go. So that's an old section.
Yeah, see if Commissioner Shinn, if you have it, because
Yes, I do.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have it with the adjacent buildings in the view.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. All right, so in the meantime, we'll show that quickly when you get to it. And in the meantime, I don't know if we have any other questions.
Correct me if I'm not sharing the right thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this is the adjacent house here. This is the yard. And then this is the building.
That's the existing building.
Yes, this is the existing building. And this is the planter. And this is the 10 feet tall acoustical wall. I'm not sure if this is drawn to scale. I'm just sharing what was submitted.
Yeah. So it's very likely that you won't be able to see this acoustical wall, but the idea of it is that you won't be able to hear any noise from the parking on the roof. And ideally, if you can see anything, it'll be the landscaping that is filling up 30 feet from the rear of the existing building to the first parking space. So effectively creating a rear yard on the roof of this existing building. Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't think there are other questions. Anybody have anything they want to ask before we go on? Commissioner Shibeta, did you want to ask anything?
No, I not at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Reservoir spaces, show them on the plan. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the public.
Okay, the case we are currently discussing is 2019-24 BZ 2721 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn. You wish to call in, the call-in number is 646-558-8656. The webinar ID number is 966-0022-1805, and the passcode is 978190 should you need it. When you have called in, you'll press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute to speak. If you are in the Zoom room already, please press your Zoom hand.
There's one person in the waiting room. I don't know if that person is interested in speaking on this. Yeah, hands up. So we're allowing Ms. or Mr. Wurzberger to speak. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon already. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners. I just want to take a few minutes to speak about this ongoing matter.
So you'll have 3 minutes to speak, Mr. Wurzberger. Go ahead.
Okay. Should I start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this, we've been neighbors with Plaza for over 10 years now. And for most of that part, we were, friendly neighbors until they started construction for this project. And the issue that we're having, specifically why I wanted to speak to today, I mean, a lot of it was kind of visible by some of the rhetoric that was said, but our experience with Plaza is that they say one thing, but do something else. And especially with this construction, for those of you who remember when they started, this project was shut down for a while because they themselves tried to cut corners. It could be blamed the construction crew, I'm not sure, but their own buildings were imploding. So what they say and what they do, from our experience, is always different. Just a couple of quick points that I want to mention. Our issue with them, obviously, is they came to us when they needed us. They made promises. They haven't delivered on any of those promises. In addition, during their construction, they created a tremendous amount of damage in our backyard. And not once, no matter how many times we requested, we've asked them to come in and assess and to make it right. And what they offer is nothing. And obviously now, just for full disclosure, we are currently in litigation with them. But the point of this meeting is the future, is the safety and quality of life that we're concerned about. You just showed our house. I mean, I look younger in that particular picture, but the last picture shows our backyard. We play under that building. My kids play, and I'm concerned for their safety. Additionally, our bedroom windows are 30 feet from that, so we're concerned about the noise. But most importantly, noise is one issue. I mean, obviously, when you talk about their snow removals, their machines start at 4 o'clock in the morning. So you can have sound barrier walls, but for rooftop parking, they're going to have snow removal machines. I mean, again, it's only a couple of times a year, but those are one of the things that I remember throughout the years when that was an empty lot. Another thing is they talk about customer parking, but they just bought a property around the corner and one on the next block. And the only thing they're interested in is selling cars. And I don't blame them. Every company, I run a business, I also want to be successful, but not at the expense of the neighbors. They made promises that they got to keep in the past. They caused damage that they need to fix. And most importantly, I want to urge this board to please make sure that whatever they say they're going to do, they're held 100% accountable, because the experience has showed that they say one thing and do something else.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony and your participation in the hearing. And if you submitted written testimony, thank you for submitting that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else having called in, though we did have many people submit written testimony. You want to just one more time, Tony, make the announcement? Because otherwise.
Sure. The case we are currently discussing is 2019-24 BZ 2721 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn. Should you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 966-0022-1805, and the passcode, should you need it, is 978190. If you are calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. You're in the Zoom room, press your Zoom hand. This is regarding Plaza Auto Mall.
Okay, so I guess. So, Mr. Palat, I don't know, it's really your consultants, how much time they need to respond to these questions. We also have, we have open seeker, noise and DOT are open.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll lower my hand. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've tried not to speak during this hearing as much as I can. So I appreciate you allowing all the consultants to testify. And just like you, I was shocked that there's nobody here testifying against, but not really, because we did spend a lot of time with the council person's office. And I think we resolved everything well. Commissioner Shavetta and Vice Chair, I haven't heard from anybody on the record if there are any other comments we could address from the other commissioners right now. Commissioner Shavetta, did we address your concerns to your satisfaction? And can we put those to you in writing?
I would like to see I would like to see these plans in writing and how you plan on enforcing that the employees. First of all, how many employees are parking? How many drive to work? Are all the employees who are working there and driving to work, are there going to be space for them in the parking lot? And if not, what are the alternative measures that you have to ensure that they are not parking on the street? So something along those lines.
If I can engage in that conversation for just 1 minute, would that be acceptable to you?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Palatnik, we've already had this conversation. So
No,
we've already had
I understand, Matt.
and you're interrupting again. I don't know why you don't know how to not do that, okay? So we've already had this conversation in depth with Mr. Valari. We asked those questions. We're asking for an operational plan to address the overflow of employee park and customer parking that's not going to all fit in this garage because there's only 90 something spaces for both uses. Okay, so we don't need to have a back and forth about this. You're not the expert on the subject. Okay, so next.
Can I respond to the question he had raised? Okay. So I think my only outstanding issue is just revising the drawings with regards to the reservoir spaces, because that does affect the circulation and one of the findings of the special permit. I think, as I have stated from the onset of this project, is having this project that provides whatever number of parking spaces for the employee and the customer is better than not having any. So I think I would be satisfied with this, but I need you to correct those information. And I had asked for some pedestrian clarification. Those also have been provided in terms of all the signage. So I'm okay with it, but do respond to all the questions of all the other commissioners.
We'd be happy to. And Commissioner Shavetta, just going back to your comments a second ago, where you, just so you're alert, we are not representing that all the employees are going to be parking, not utilizing the street. Right now, all of the employees do utilize the street. That's the current condition. What we're representing to you is that there's going to be rooftop parking that will accommodate some of those employees. We cannot give you a specific number because it's going to depend upon days of the week, business. Obviously, right now, for example, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a microchip shortage. As a result, cars are not in stock. So there aren't as many employees around. There was COVID before this. There's different things that affect different business practices. So we can't commit exactly each day what's going to happen. Right now, you can't get a car. They can't even get deliveries. So we really are, we for that reason, we can't tell you every day what's going to happen, because we can't foresee. Nobody could foresee a pandemic. Nobody could foresee a microchip shortage. But we can tell you that we're going to try very hard to make it much better than it is right now and give employees a place to park. And we're going to continue communicating with the council person. I just wanted to let you know that, Commissioner Shavetta, because I didn't want you to think that we're promising that every employee is going to suddenly magically have an off-street parking space. We wish we could, but that's not what we're representing right now.
Mr. Palatnik, now you're going off in that tangent that I don't want you to go into. Mr. Valari's job is to come up with an operational plan so that the answer isn't your answer. The answer isn't we're going to do the best we can. The answer is an operational plan that's going to assign employee parking spaces to wherever they go on other properties that are owned by this owner so that employees do not park on the street. Please do not go back on your old mantras. We're trying to move forward. And I don't want the phone number to be the answer, which is one reason I don't want you to answer the questions for the experts, please. Okay?
Of course, Madam Chair, I'm happy to listen to you advise me when I should speak and not speak. Thank you.
Careful.
How much time?
Okay, it's lunchtime now. So how much time? My question was, how much time do you need to respond?
We could respond within 2 weeks.
Mr. Valari, how much time do you need to respond to an operational plan? And the same for Mr. Where's our engineer? Oh yeah, Mr. Kambarakis. How much time do you need?
2 weeks is fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 weeks. We have all the information we need. We just need to reformat it in a way that is most conducive to the board. So I think 2 weeks is fine.
But you're coming up with a plan. It's not just a format. So it means that you and your client actually have to work out a solution, just like you did when you came up with this idea of the truck loading zone, right?
Absolutely.
He's very well paid, as you pointed out. He can do it.
All right, well, so maybe I'm giving you a little more time, but all right, thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for participating. Please listen again carefully, get a transcript of the hearing, which is easy to do for free on YouTube, to make sure you answer every single thing that was said at the hearing, respond to every single thing. Hearing and review session. Okay, Tracy, go ahead.
I just wanted to note that, I mean, hopefully we will get responses from the agencies in the next few weeks. I don't know if there'll be sign-offs, but I guess we'll wait and see.
Okay, so we'll have a conversation before we actually select a continuation date based on our estimate of when the agencies will respond. Okay, that makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Madam Chair, are we logging on to the 2 o'clock and then breaking?
Yeah, exactly. So at 2 o'clock, we're going to log on to the 2 o'clock schedule, basically say hello, and then take a 30-minute break till 2:30. Okay?
Okay, and then, okay. Are we gonna do bills first?
Yeah. Yeah. we
I can
will.
let them know?
Yeah, you can let them know to call up on the 2 o'clock. That's great. Thank you.
Okay,
Tony.
okay. All right, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So long, so long.
Bye.